There's no time.
Lost. Ties. Darkness. Tears.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody out there. It's the first episode of 2020. I mean, I know we did like matinee and stuff like that, but this is the first actual episode 177.
Damn, we've been doing this for what? How many years now?
Shit, I don't know.
Maybe 3?
Yeah, probably. Maybe even a little bit longer than that, because I think we started it in the summer of 2016, I want to say.
Man, fuck all this. I'm retiring. I quit. Nah, I'm just kidding.
No, you don't.
No, I'm having fun. We still got a lot of shit we got to talk about.
That's what I mean. It's like I still have like 2 years worth of topics that people have recommended that I'm probably never going to get around to.
Oh, we got too many pages.
Now, this topic in particular, I can't remember if somebody requested it or if you said something about it.
I mentioned this a long time ago.
I think you mentioned it a long time ago, and I wrote it on the list, and then like it just kept getting shuffled around on the schedule and stuff like that. And then I was like, you know what I mean? Because I like to have like true crime and then like just kind of more paranormal or weird stuff, and I like to, you know, kind of switch them out. So it turns out that most of the topics that people have recommended are true crime, so I'm running out of like paranormal stuff and like weird stuff and everything. So it's like I finally got around to doing this topic, even though it was probably like 2 years ago that you mentioned it.
There's another one I came up with. You know, I'll go ahead and tell the audience, man. I want to eventually talk about the killdozer.
Yeah, you were just talking about this the other night.
About the guy who made his own tank, tore it out of town with it.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty much the whole story.
Well, there's more to it.
I know,
there's more to it than that.
You just gave it all away.
Maybe I'll talk about the killdozer. Well, people know about the killdozer.
I was like, the only thing I knew about the movie named Killdozer from the 70s. But, you know, I guess that's why they called it that after the movie. But yeah, we wanted to do a show about Boleskine House. Now, we did a show a long time ago about Aleister Crowley. It wasn't like a real... I think it was a while back that we did it, but the one that we did on Aleister Crowley, I feel like it was just like fun facts about Aleister Crowley. It wasn't like a super in-depth anything. So I thought, well, it's not really repeating because I'm mostly talking about the house. Yes, we're going to talk a lot about Aleister Crowley because he is it was obviously its most famous resident.
Probably going to talk about Led Zeppelin.
But yeah, there's Jimmy Page owned the house for a while. There was like weird shit going on, like even in the area, like even before the house was built. And it should be noted too that I didn't even do this on purpose, but it's actually relevant to be talking about it now because I actually didn't realize this until I started researching. But Boleskine House essentially burned down in 2015, and then there was another fire in July of last year, 2019. And as of last month, December of 2019, they've started restoring it like the Boleskine House Foundation, like it's a nonprofit, and they bought it and they're going to restore it and like open it to the public, like as a museum. So they just started doing it. They're not really sure that, they think it was like a kitchen or something like that. Now the one in July of 2019 was, I don't know if that was the main house or some of the outbuildings. They think that was arson. But the first one, the one that, mostly destroyed the house in 2015, I think that was just an accidental fire because there were people living there at the time, although they weren't home when it happened.
Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't those insurance wires getting crossed up.
I don't think so. I mean, like the people that had been living there for quite a while and,
Yeah.
But,
insurance wires, man, they've burned down many a fucking home and business over time.
They have. Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it is like, despite its reputation, I'm always like kind of surprised when I look at it because when you kind of hear about it, it's like, oh, did Aleister Crowley live in it? It's like on the shores of Loch Ness and all this other kind of stuff. I always like before I saw pictures of it, I always imagined that it would look like Hell House, like from the movie from the 70s, like with all these like turrets and shit like that.
That house from The Legacy.
Yeah, I thought it would look something like that. It doesn't look anything like that. It just looks like a regular. It was originally a hunting lodge, so it looks kind of like it's big-ish, but it's not huge, and it's only like one story. And I think what makes it look weird too is that just that big like terrace with the sand and everything like that, which Crowley did for magical purposes. But it just makes the house look really odd. Like it doesn't have any like landscaping around
You'd
it.
at
or anything
least
like that.
think that it would look like the damn cover off that first Led Zeppelin, off the cover of that first Black Sabbath album. That witch standing out there.
Yeah, see, that's
That
what I
house
mean.
behind
That's
it?
what I was expecting. It just looks
It's a
so.
house or a church. I can't remember.
It looks
but-
so pedestrian.
Yeah, it just looks like a normal.
Like
place.
given its reputation.
Yeah.
Over the years. But yeah, so it's like there's enough like cool stories about it that I thought we could make a show about it and talk about Aleister Crowley and his time there and like some of the people that lived there subsequently.
It might just be British prog rock dudes getting high in that house, though.
Well, I'm sure there was some of that going on too. But yeah, so it's like this is actually a really interesting topic. I find it a really interesting topic. So we'll kind of get into it in a bit. However, before we do that, I have a whole bunch of shout outs.
Okay.
Yeah, we have like a whole bunch of new patrons.
Yeah, I asked. I asked for patrons, and you asked, and they came.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
gonna I'm gonna continue to ask.
Please.
I'm gonna ask every day now.
I know, every single show you
Every
should
single
just
show,
like
I'm gonna start asking.
give us a Patreon. We'll shut
could
up
use
if you
some
give
patrons.
us for
You can never break that $500 a month mark.
Yeah, it's like we got almost up there and then like we lost a
came back
couple
down.
because of like, you
Yeah,
know,
people
holidays
lose-
and people's financial problems and stuff. Which, you know, I understand that.
There's enough of you now that if anybody who joins up, even just a couple dollars makes a difference now.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
because we have so many people on YouTube, and I think we
Yeah,
mentioned
so
this
many
last
people
time. I
on
don't
YouTube.
even know how many people we
Right.
have that are listening to
The
that.
people that are paying us the big bucks, they've been with us for a long time. They've been playing that a long time. They started that back when we didn't have any patrons, but maybe like 1,000 subs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy. We're almost to 8,000 now,
yeah.
which that's crazy.
I don't think you become a real channel until you hit like 10,000.
Yeah, but it's like we're getting there slowly.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, like I said, we're kind of an acquired
we're,
taste.
we're an underground channel. Yeah.
We're much cooler that way. But yeah, so we got a lot of new patrons this week. So big thank yous and shout outs to Odd Cat, Janet, Jamie, aka Black Marigold, and Mary Ellen, who I think was a patron before and then we lost her for a little while, but then she came back. So thank you guys very much. Also, thank you to Jessica and Melanie for their PayPal donations. Melanie gives us PayPal donations all the time. Also, our friend Sophie, and I think it was you, Sophie.
it
She
was
sent
Sophie.
me, yeah.
She asked if you got it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
She was the one, remember, she sent me that Ian Brady book, which I'm reading. I'm at the chapter now where he's talking about the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. Did we do a show about that? We did, didn't we?
I think so.
I mean, I remember writing about it. It's like I get confused about like what we did for the show, like
Yeah.
what I did in my books.
Which
It's
one was
like,
that?
That's like the guy in it was Cleveland, right? That was going around like chopping people up and draining all their blood and like leaving them in the slums. It's like back in the 30s.
Yeah, you did that one.
I'm pretty sure I did a show about that, but
Yeah, it was just centered around those homeless camps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sophie sent me another book. Check it out. Dennis is going to be super into this. It's Catherine Ramsland's book about BTK. Look, Dennis, it's a book all about you.
Yeah, you know, that's from the interviews that I did when I was in prison, you know. I know everyone really wants to know what my deal was, and I tell the whole story because,
What his deal was.
You know, I'm a very interesting guy. Everybody, lot of charisma. And, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, they can read this book and turn their life around, you know. I'm just, you know, because, you know, I have so much to teach the world, you know.
In like how not to be.
Well, you could look at it that way, but, you know, I was pretty
how
good.
I'm gonna look
You could look at it that way if you want to, but I was pretty good for the community. I mean, you know, my friends even testified to church, the work that I did with church, and, you know, and I made sure that the grass was cut, you know, and that everybody's grass was the proper height in the town, and I put a lot of dogs behind bars, and, you know.
Important shit.
You know, I was a well-rounded man, you know, well-rounded character. You know, I did a little bit of everything, and you know, people could learn from me.
You certainly did.
Yeah. I know you liked it.
Fucking Dennis.
You know, Jenny, you got some big old boobs.
I
You
do.
that,
I know.
Jenny? Oh.
Did I know that? No, I was like, I'm surprised
Yeah.
every single day. I wake up every morning and be like, what the fuck? Where did this come
knock
from?
that shit off, Dennis.
Dennis is getting all fucking frisky.
Well,
But
you
yeah,
paying attention to him. You pay attention to Dennis. He starts talking, and then you know he starts thinking he's important, and he starts taking over. It's that natural gangster in him, you know.
oh, okay.
Just got to take over every situation, you know.
I
Stop
mean-
grandstanding.
You tell him. But yeah, so it's like now it's like when I read that BTK book, I'm going to read it entirely, like in my head it'll be you doing Dennis Rader's voice. So the whole thing is going to sound like that when I read it.
And I'll just,
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be thinking the whole time.
Like, you know?
So I'm going to be reading it, I'm going to be reading about like all these horrible murders, and then I'll be like snickering to myself because it's like going to be your impression of Dennis Rader.
Yes, ma'am.
Fucking hell. All right, so also I wanted to say too, because some people have asked about it, the Witching Hour show that I started doing where I'm reading like scary stories and stuff, I'm going to start putting those up on Thursdays. I don't know if I'm going to do like the early access thing or anything because I'm already like, I already have the 3 shows a week and doing early access and stuff, and I get confused like about what day
Now
it is
she's
and
reading
stuff.
stories. You got all the big old stuff. You got how many? You got 6 stories you're holding back on them, aren't you?
Well, 6 episodes.
6 episodes. It's
yeah.
more stories in each episode.
Yeah, because each episode has at least 2 stories, like depending on how long they are. Like I think the first one that I put up, I think that was 4 or 5 different stories because it was really short. But I have some other ones that are 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories, whatever. So I have, I'm done with all the ones for this month. And I think 1 or 2 for next month.
See,
and then
Jen and I found out there's a whole scene for that on YouTube.
Yeah, some people are related to
read,
that. And when
some of things have 1 million hits on them.
Well, when I put up the first one, and it's like I like reading scary stories, and I have to read some of my stories like for my audiobooks and stuff like that. So I just figured, why don't I just like read a couple more and then like make shows out of it, because I have to read my stories anyway, and I'm already in the booth, so so I might as well like have another show come out every week, because they're not really that time consuming. You do the sound editing is kind of a pain, but other than that, it's like not really that big a deal. And and it's like when I posted the first one on Thursday, like I got like a lot of comments, like a lot of our regular listeners and stuff were like, oh, this is really cool, and it's like they listen to it when they're going to sleep and stuff like that. So I guess a lot of people do that. I got the idea like over Halloween because I found this one channel, and I can't remember what it's called now, but I subscribed to it. But it's just a guy reading. His are mostly like true stories, like from Reddit and stuff like that. But I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, you just kind of listen. He just had like real simple graphics and stuff. It's not anything complicated. But, he's just like telling these creepy stories. And I'm like, man, I kind of like listening to people reading creepy stories. It's
How
like,
many views is he getting?
I don't, well, his, shit.
Like hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, see.
I listened to a whole bunch of those like on Halloween night,
I mean, that alone would be good advertising.
Yeah.
Just for the show and books and stuff, it's a good way, almost like a good, way of getting your name out there.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I figured since I had to read stories anyway, like I might as well because and the more content you put up, it's like I know we already do 3 shows a week, but that one
it moves
doesn't.
you up in the algorithms if you put a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, so
we don't want to just put bullshit out. We'll put out stuff that people
like.
like.
I'm only going to put out stuff that I think is like good. I'm not just going to put shit up there just for the sake of putting it up there.
I also think it's kind of a good idea to have each little thing as like for a different target audience, so that way you have a real well-rounded show. You can bring in people from different interests, but they're different but same.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why I keep them all in different like playlists too, because then that way it's like
kind of like beer and board games, the way they do it.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too, because it's like they have like a whole bunch of different shows, and it's like maybe you like some of their shows but not the other ones, and so you can just like watch the ones you like and not really watch.
You guys need to go check out Beer and Board Games if you've never seen that channel. That's a fucking awesome.
Well, and I love it's Blame Society is the name of the channel.
Yeah, Blame Society's the name of the channel. Yeah.
They do Beer and Board Games. They have like 4 or 5 different shows, because I think they do Chad Vader, and it's like a bunch of comedians,
movie reviews,
and Welcome to the Basement is Matt and Craig, like, and they just like talk about movies, and I really like that show.
Yeah,
and
then
Beer
they
and
get drunk and play board games.
Yeah, Beer and Board Games is
hilarious.
really funny. It's usually like Matt and Aaron are the 2 guys, and then they just have like a rotating cast of other 2 people, and they just like sit around and drink.
That's where we got the name for our cat, Baby Cookie. Baby Cookie's from
is a character
on Beer and Board Games.
It's like
a little naked doll
that comes in every now and then.
It comes in naked.
Makes little
drunk. It's a naked drunk doll.
She's not drunk, I don't think. She's
drunk about half the time.
Well, sometimes she is, but so she comes in and like makes all kinds of.
She's white, but she speaks Ebonics.
Yeah. It's really fun. It's funnier than we're making it sound.
You just gotta go fucking see it. It's like hilarious.
But it's like some of the games are better than others. Like they do a different game every week. Sometimes they do more than one, like on one show. The best ones are the like kind of the dirty ones, like they're ones that are kind of like what's like the Cards Against Humanity, like ones like that. Or sometimes people will send them like really, really cheesy ass games like that I didn't even know existed. Like, you guys, the other day they did one that was Kenny G, like Keeping It Saxy, I think was it. I was like, somebody made that game, like somebody mass produced that game. Yeah. And it's like, it was like the lamest game ever. But the episode was hilarious just because the fucking game was so stupid and I couldn't believe that anybody had fucking made it.
We got to send them one of your games.
I was thinking about it because you can actually sponsor, like on their Patreon, you can sponsor an episode and they'll play, if you send them like your game and like however much money is like a sponsorship, then they'll play it.
So you got to buy a slot. Yeah. That's smart, actually. Yeah. Because that way you're not inundated with free shit, free plugs. Yeah. You got to pay. You got to pay for that advertising.
Yeah, it's one of
I respect their game.
It's one of their things on Patreon. Yeah. Like you can, like it's a certain amount. I don't remember how much it is, but it's like, at least 100. I think it is. It's quite a bit of money. But and you can sponsor an episode.
Yeah, and if you look at their Patreon, man, those dudes are fucking making bank.
Well, they've been doing it for, Welcome to the Basement, they've been doing that for 8 years. Yeah. Chad Vader, they might have been doing for 10 or 11 years. So they've been around a long time.
Yeah, and they're like in the thousands a month.
Some of them, like Matt Sloan and stuff like that, he's like...
They're famous.
Yeah, he's kind of famous in the, Minneapolis area, like comedian type of area. And like, he's actually like written for TV shows and shit like that. So it's like, so they're not
random dudes.
Yeah, they're not just like random people. Yeah. They're kind of like well known within their circles.
But they're making fucking good money on that program.
Yeah, I hate
to focus in on the money, but
I have to say though,
they can do that shit for a living.
They do, but they do an incredible amount of
lot of
work because
it was over 10,000 a month that they were making.
Because they do at least 4 shows a week, if not more. They also do live streams pretty much all the time. You can watch like all their beer and board games. Like you can watch the whole unedited thing. Like if you go to their website, like you can watch the whole thing live. And not see like all the shit they cut out. Because I think they filmed 2 at once, and so they're there for like 4 hours or something. So you can like watch the whole thing. But it's like they have constantly have like new products on their Patreon page. Like they have all kind of coasters and all kind of like branded. They have their own beer and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like they're really...
If you're into like
they put a lot of work on it.
If you're into stuff like MST 3000, you'd like fucking Blame Society. They're kind of like that kind of style.
Yeah, and Matt Sloan is like a big MST3K fan, actually. Welcome to the Basement is a lot like that because they both kind of sit on a couch and watch a movie like every week and kind of riff on it, in a similar kind of way. But then they talk about movies like seriously, like what movies they've seen, and like people send them movies to watch and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
They're high caliber people, man. Very educated. They're not simpletons like me.
Well, that's why I like Welcome to the Basement because it's like they've seen like everything, and also Matt is like into a lot of the same music as me.
It's like into the old classic silver screen shit. They know all the fucking. That story is just like something from 1925.
Yeah, they know like everything
about
all the movies, stories, pretty much everything. Other than like some niche stuff, because I don't think Matt is super into horror movies, so he doesn't really know like a lot about horror movies, but he knows a lot about other types of movies.
They're down in that basement. They got some badass records too.
Yeah, he has like millions and millions of records.
Yeah. And he'll like turn a record out so you can see the cover. Like every episode's a different cover.
It's a different one.
Oh, he's got that one, that album, and that.
He's got like every record ever.
Yeah, all the good albums he had them.
Yeah, and like a lot. It's cool too because he has like really eclectic taste. Like I said, he's really into like punk and kind of alternative music from back in the '80s. But he likes pretty much everything. And he has everything. So, all right. Since that was a big long digression, we get around to talking about. Boleskine House.
Yeah, it's not the Belasco House.
Not the Belasco House. Yeah. This is Boleskine.
Yeah.
It is in Scotland. It's actually, they consider it a manor house. Like I said, it's not gigantic. I'm not sure exactly what the square footage is. It's actually on the southeast side of Loch Ness, which we will come to in a bit.
Yeah, now this house, okay, let me go ahead and be testosterone infused, but with this situation, because I have to tease this. This is the house that you heard all the stories about that Led Zeppelin was living in. It used to belong to Aleister Crowley, and this is evidently the house where you're supposed to sell. It was haunted, and you could sell your soul to the devil in this house to become famous. That's the basic.
That's the legend.
That's the basic legend. I heard about this shit when I was a little kid. Okay, in California. Remember my old my babysitter named Kimmy?
Yeah,
she's like 14.
The
and
cute one.
Yeah, and it looked like little Princess Leia. Yeah, and I can remember her and her friends talking about this shit when I was a little kid.
Yeah,
because they'd play Led Zeppelin albums.
Right.
And when you're a little kid, things are impression.
Yeah.
And I can remember that they were saying that they had an old house, where a wizard, magician lived there, and that they would sell their soul to the devil there. And I'm like, what the fuck are these girls talking about? You know what I mean? This is like about a couple years before Star Wars and shit. But I had enough awareness to know, what magic was and selling your soul and the devil. And I was going, wow. And somehow there was rock and roll was involved with this.
Yeah.
And and cute teenage girls, you know what I mean?
All the best things in life.
All the best things in life. So yeah, and they had the black light posters and everything, and the black lights and burning incense. There's probably smoking weed, but I was too young to probably realize what it was they were doing.
I'd be
that's
very
the way California rolled that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'd pass me around like a teddy bear and fucking hug on me and shit. These fucking 14, 15, 12, 13-year-old girls.
Because you were such a
I was
cute
like
little
7.
boy.
Yeah, yeah,
he looked just like Damien.
Look, they used to tell me that it looked like Damien. And I got pictures
Damien
to prove it. I looked
as a kid. Yeah.
They would say he's that little boy from The Omen.
He's the son.
And they'd show me off and shit. You know what I mean? She was like, yeah.
You always make me laugh when you do like your little kid.
That's my little kid.
With your little kid movements.
Yeah.
That fucking cracks me up.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this house is in the Scottish Highlands, about 21 miles south of Inverness. Now, before Aleister Crowley even moved in there, before he was even born, before he was even conceived, there was all kind of weird shit that happened, like around the area where the house would later be built. Now, the parish of Boleskine was actually kind of formed, incorporated in the 13th century. Now, originally on the site where Boleskine House would later stand, there was a kirk, which is kind of what they call a church over there, and a cemetery, which had been built in the parish. Now, there was like all these ministers that ran the parish and shit like that. It's over like many, many years. But even like back then, there were like legends about this place. Like there was this one minister named Thomas Houston or Houston, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, who died in 1705. Now he said apparently there was this wizard that lived in the area, and he would like, I don't know why, but he would like bring the dead back out of the graves, like at the graveyard, like just for shits and giggles, I guess. He's like, look, I'm raising the dead. So it's... You know what I mean?
Well, necromancy was always kind of like the whole...
True.
That was what sorcerers were trying to do. And really, when you're talking about magic or any kind of spirituality, it always culminates in bringing back the dead.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus was bringing back the dead. There's all kinds of necromancers, all these stories. This even goes back to Chinese lore about people bringing back the dead. I can't believe it, this new Rise of Skywalker movie, where they're bringing back the dead, and that people were surprised, and I'm like, what told you in A New Hope that this was sorcerers?
Yeah.
And, and they even called Obi-Wan Kenobi an old wizard, a crazy old wizard. That's what it is, space wizards. And necromancers. And then...
Well, and they went into that in the prequels, too.
The prequels were talking about, he could cheat death. He could even keep the dead from dying,
Yeah, that was like the whole point of the fucking
movie. The whole point of the fucking Force was to either become one with the Force and then hold yourself together and come back as a ghost, to be immortal, or to raise the dead, or to keep people from dying. That's zombies.
Yeah.
Vampires.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they're talking about.
I can't believe, anybody that's bitching about that in the new
They're
movie, it's
bitching
like,
about the new
did you
movie?
even see any
Did
of
you
the
see
other
the other
movies?
movies? Yeah. Do you understand how lore works?
It's not even like the outside, like the extended universe or anything
No.
like that. It was in the movies.
Yeah.
Into other movies.
The Sith wanted to fucking bring back the dead.
Well, and like you said, that's something that like evil, like quote unquote evil.
They all do it in every
wizards,
movie.
necromancers, and stuff like that. That's kind of their thing.
Yeah, even Big Trouble in Little China.
Exactly.
Was a ghost trying to reincarnate himself. That's coming back from the dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, so, back in, the 1700s, apparently there was some local wizard and he would, reanimate the corpses in the graveyard. And it was this one minister's job, Thomas Houston or Houston, who had to kind of, put him back in there. I guess that was like his job. So that was how the story went. So this is even before Boleskine House was even built. This was like the same area. Now, there's another story too, that the kirk, or the church, actually there was like a whole congregation in there, like doing their little churchy thing, and the church caught fire and burned down and killed everyone inside. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how the story goes, the church was destroyed and everyone died in it. Now, there's a burial ground like on the site, and the remains of the original chapel are still there. And then there's also a hut that's called the Grave Watcher's Hut. That's where the person who was the grave watcher, he wasn't like looking for zombies. He was looking for grave robbers, because people would come and like, dig the bodies up, steal shit, steal bodies, whatever. So he just stayed in this little hut and like watched out for people doing that. So Boleskine House was actually built on the site of the burned down church. It was first built in the 1760s by Colonel Archibald Fraser. And as I mentioned before, it was built as a hunting lodge. Now, evidently, I'm not sure if I entirely understand this, but apparently Archibald Fraser, he chose this particular site to build the house because he wanted to piss off this other guy named Simon Fraser, who I'm assuming was a relative of his. Simon Fraser was the 11th Lord Lovett, sometimes nicknamed the Fox. Probably not because he was sexy.
Probably because the fucker was wily.
I think that's probably why. Because I've seen paintings of him and he wasn't all that.
Yeah.
So apparently Simon Fraser had given his support to the Hanoverian side during the Jacobite uprising in 1745. And I guess his land was like kind of either surrounded where Boleskine House would eventually be built, or was like, butted up against it. So Archibald Fraser said, well, I'm going to build this house right here just to like piss you off, because they were like on differing sides in the war. Now, fun fact, later Simon Fraser was executed in London by beheading. And one of these stories that goes around about Boleskine House is that sometimes you can hear Lord Lovett's decapitated head rolling up and down the halls. I don't know if anyone's seen it or not.
Yeah, I guess a rolling head has a certain sound that everyone can recognize. It's universal.
That's what I was just going to say.
Man,
it's
that's
like,
a fucking head.
Is that the first thing you would say?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I can hear the squish, like when his neck goes to like...
I can hear the face hit, and then the hair. And then the face, and then the hair.
So I'm assuming at least some people must have seen it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why would that be the first thing that you're fucking... And Lord Lovett wasn't even executed in Scotland. He was executed in London. So why his head would have like flown all the way back to Boleskine House just to roll up and down the halls, I don't really know. But that's like one story that's kind of told about the house. And this was, before Aleister Crowley even thought about moving in. So the hunting lodge was actually, the Fraser family lived there. And they kept like building out onto it, like expanding it until about 1830. As I said, it's all one floor. It has 4 bedrooms, a kitchen, a servant's bedroom, like an attic room that's kind of like over the kitchen. Then it has a lounge, a drawing room, which is really, really big, and it has a library. Also, underneath the house, there's a tunnel that leads from the house to the cemetery. Not entirely sure why, but they put it there back then. So they lived there until then. Now, Aleister Crowley bought it from the Fraser family in 1899. So let's talk a little bit about Mr. Crowley.
Mr. Crowley. Down.
I figured that was coming.
You knew that was going to come, didn't you?
That's why I said it
That
like
shit
that.
was spontaneous as fuck, too. I didn't know that was coming. You should think that we staged that. I didn't stage that. I had this thing for musical humor. She'll watch that MST, and I don't get hardly any of it. And then all of a sudden, they'll do some kind of musical humor, and I start rolling. And then she looks at me like, what the fuck? Because I respond to that real well. lowbrow humor and people singing songs.
But that's like that's the nice thing about MST is that they do like a lot of like highbrow, like a lot of like obscure humor.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're talking about.
Like I get a lot of it because a lot of it's not as highbrow as you think because a lot of it's just kind of like obscure like shows and commercials from the 70s.
You have to sit around and watch a bunch of TV and read a bunch of books to even know what they're talking about half the time.
That's true, but then like they have that, but then they also have like you said, music, like funny songs, fart jokes.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So, it has something for everybody. That's what's nice about it. And another thing that's nice about it is you can watch episodes over and over again because there's so many jokes in there.
You can't get them all.
That you can't get them all. And it's like, so they have like really good rewatchability.
Yeah. I tell you what, man, that Manos Hands of Fate live show that we saw from...
I don't think I've ever laughed so hard.
God, I was fucking rolling. I was fucking... Yeah, Manos Hands of Fate is the best show that they put on.
They've done some good. I really like Giant Spider Invasion too, but it's like they've done some good ones. But I mean, Manos, it's just such a good one to like fucking riff on because it's so weird, and two, it's like there's long stretches of silence, so it's like there's a lot of room for you to like put your own jokes in there and shit like that.
Acting and. Yeah. And
the editing is just, because they can only film for like 30 seconds at a time because of the camera that
it's almost good. It's so bad. It's weird.
See, yeah, that's what I always thought.
Yeah.
Because I actually kind of like the idea, and it actually has like a really creepy atmosphere. I don't know if they intended it. It's creepy in a way that they didn't intend.
It's like watching a crime scene photos or something.
It is, and they made that like when they did it first on MST, like way back in the Joel era. That was one of the lines that I remember from it. It's like every scene of this movie, every frame of this movie looks like someone's last known photograph.
Yeah,
it does, and I was like, wow, they nailed it. That's exactly what it's like. But it's just I'd almost like to see somebody. I don't know. I'd almost like to see somebody remake it because, like I said, it's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, you couldn't remake
that.
But
I don't know if you could capture...
Part of the reason why it had that tone is because it was so incompetent.
Because it was incompetent.
And on a really low-tech equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was why it came off that way. If you did that with modern equipment, it would just be lost in the fucking shuffle.
It probably would just be like,
it would just look like
really boring.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's kind of why people still respond to it nowadays, because... if there's one thing, it's just weird, and they didn't mean for it to be weird, and that makes it weirder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We might need to get back to the show. They think we're stalling because we don't have any material.
We do, though. I have whole pages of notes.
This is an interesting story. I need to stop fucking with her and let her talk about it.
I know, see, because that's why our last show about Lizzie Borden was like 3 hours
long.
Because you just kept like interrupting and going off on
Although
these,
a lot of people tell me that me fucking with you is the show.
I know. That's why I was so bummed out, like why you couldn't do the matinee with me, because we could have, we were going to talk about Uncut Gems because I wanted you to talk about it, but it's like, that's okay. I
had missed that show.
Yeah, because he had to go take your mom to the doctor.
Yeah, she had an eye doctor.
Yeah. So, Aleister Crowley, actually born Edward Alexander Crowley in 1875. Now, he came from like a wealthy family, so he was kind of one of those guys that he didn't really have to get a job ever. You could just be one of those guys back in the day that used to like lay around and write poetry. And
yeah, what was funny back in England and France did it. You know what I mean? They had a noble class. These were supposed to be like the rich people. They put them on welfare.
Yeah.
That's funny.
They still kind of are.
Yeah, they need to do that here. Well, I guess they kind of do.
Yeah, I was going to say, they do.
All that shit they do for the corporations and stuff is similar.
Yeah.
Where, they're getting all the tax breaks and they're getting all the fucking contracts and shit. In a way,
well, yeah, I mean, my broke ass doesn't get anything.
Yeah, but Europe had the fucking balls to put the rich people on welfare. So those fuckers didn't have to work.
Well, some of them were, I mean, the royal family is like a different story, but a lot of those kind of like noble families and stuff like that, it's just their families had money, so it's just got passed from family to family.
Well, in France, I remember reading that if you could prove you were this and that and become a count, then you would just you'd get money from the king.
Yeah,
you didn't have to work.
They're like,
they put you on like a stipend.
Okay. Yeah,
they're like, okay, yeah, you're a count, all right.
Put on a powdered wig and come to the party, like
and then they would like give
once every few weeks.
They'd put you in charge of something. You know what I mean? Like you're the count of
Monte Cristo.
There was no Monte Cristo,
I know.
but Fucking, you're like, cause that's what that story was all about. He made it up. There was no Monte Cristo, but he like the count of the fucking, of the shit box behind the fucking McDonald's. And then you'd get like a couple fucking, like a couple $100 crowns a fucking month. Or some shit like that.
Every now and then go pop in there and look at that dumpster behind the McDonald's and make sure.
That's how the Marquis de Sade was.
Yeah.
He was basically on welfare. But he didn't live like a rich man per se. At the end of his life, I think he was living in a fucking barn.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Spent a lot of his time in jail. He was in the Bastille and shit for writing that dirty ass shit and making people mad.
He did.
And making people, he was a fucking pervert.
We haven't done a show on the Marquis de Sade.
We're going to talk about the Marquis.
One of these days. Just remind me, I'll write it down. That's because I don't even think he's on my list.
He was a subversive motherfucker. I think he lied about a lot of the stuff, but
probably.
Mostly what he's known for is his erotica. He was writing that erotica and handing it out through the bars of the Bastille. And they was selling, and they were printing that shit. Fucking, he was.
Did you see that movie that was made about that called Quills?
Oh,
it's actually pretty good. I remember it being pretty good.
I read some of his stuff, man. It's wild. It's hard to believe that was 1700s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like some fucking weird ass sadistic fucking porn that
just goes to show it's not.
They dudes had imaginations back then.
They figured all that shit out a long time ago.
Shit was nasty. Yeah. It's like revenge porn going on and fucking mutilation and stuff. And humiliation. And it's just like some BDSM thing,
Yeah, like I said, tale as old as time. That's been going on since humans were able to write down what they were into.
Yeah.
But so Crowley had a similar situation. Like, he came from a wealthy family. He grew up in Warwickshire, England, and ended up being, lots of things. He was a writer, occultist, astrologer, painter, poet, lots of other things. Also an expert mountaineer and a master chess player. So later on, obviously, he's best known for, all of his writings and for coming up with his, religious philosophy, I guess you would call it. But he wrote the Confessions of Aleister Crowley, Magic Without Tears, and the Book of the Law. Now, the Book of the Law was actually written, he said that it came to him from an entity called Iwas in Cairo, Egypt. So he was dictated from this like spiritual being, I guess. Yeah. So he wrote that in 1904. Now, that is actually the sacred text of his occult system, which is known as Thelema. And people still practice this nowadays. It's essentially like, I don't want to say it's like Wicca, but it's kind of like a similar kind of thing where it's like, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law and all this other stuff.
Yeah, so. But that's just what the writings were like. What the system was is more like Scientology.
Yeah, kind of.
Where, you came to him and they'd teach you some shit, and then you have to pay him some more money to teach you some more shit, and then, they could keep you paying money to go up and up in levels.
Yeah.
In Thelema. That was, I don't think it was like that at the beginning, but that was just part of the...
That was just kind of evolved
it evolved into a fucking scam.
Yeah.
To where...
We talked about that a little bit when we went and did the Aleister Crowley, because we talked about the Order of the Golden Dawn and all that kind of stuff.
Crowley wanted money, man. You know what I mean? He had fucking shit to do. You know what I'm talking about?
Don't we all?
He had shit to do. He had drugs and fucking all kinds of stuff he had to buy. And you gotta get money for drugs somehow.
Yeah,
and he liked to party, you know what I mean? So the money had to come from somewhere, and you had to pay him to teach you how to be a wizard. That's really what what that evolved into.
Yeah.
And
but I would argue that if you could get people to pay for that, then more power to you.
That's exactly the same thing that L. Ron Hubbard did. That's what Scientology is all about.
Yeah.
Paying to go up in levels.
Yeah.
You leveling up. You know what I'm talking about?
Bring.
Bring. And they have to write some kind of fucking spiritual manuscripts and things to read and things that you have to do in order to level up.
Yeah.
And, you got to pay each time you do it. They call it OT, going up the bridge.
Yep.
In Scientology. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go back and go look at our Scientology with the Angry Gay Pope. He'll tell you about it.
Yeah, we've done 3 shows with him, I think.
I think two or three shows.
I can't remember.
I might have him back on again. That dude's difficult to control. he runs off at the mouth.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah, exactly.
I know somebody else that does that.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So even though Crowley was kind of like, you know, obviously the press, it was like a good story. It's like, you know, they called him the wickedest man in the world, you know, the great beast. They gave him all these other fucking names and stuff like that.
Yeah, they played right into his hands.
They really did, because I do feel like even his, you know, theological writings, his religious philosophy and stuff, I think people focus too much on that do what thou wilt, blah, 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 and it almost makes it seem like, you know, it's the kind of shit that, like, Satanists used to get, where it's like, oh, it just sounds like, oh, you just do whatever the fuck you want to, and not worry about the consequences. That's not what they're saying, at all. So I feel like, in a way, like, he was misunderstood, but then in a way, I think he thought it was kind of, like, funny, too, and he kind of, like, encouraged.
You have to understand. You have to understand. He bullshitted too. He just made shit because he was going along. It was artistic. It wasn't a logical system. All the way, you know what I mean? There would be a lot of contradictions in it, you know what I mean? Now, I can't go in there. I don't know so well enough where I can tell you exactly where to look to find these contradictions, you know what I mean? But I've read his kind of shit, and I know that kind of gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Kind of psychobabble and poetry.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's spiritual writings.
You can get away with a lot in spiritual writings because nobody knows anything. It's not like anybody has like that on lockdown.
He was writing that shit under the influence of trances and, you know, and...
All kind of crazy shit.
Yeah, and drugs. You know, he believed what he was saying.
He did. I mean, and you know, when we get into a little bit, just in a second, like when he bought Boleskine House and stuff like that. I mean, he really did seem to buy it for a particular purpose, and it's like he really did want to do this ritual that, you know, was like kind of involved. So he really did seem to want to do that. So he really believed what he wrote. I think, like to an extent.
He was a prototype L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, that's what I'm going to say. He's trying to start a new religion. Yeah. And make a bunch of money at it and get a bunch of power. Yeah. And if L. Ron Hubbard actually, you know, borrowed a lot from Crowley.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
A lot of it. A lot of the same concepts.
Yeah, and it's really instructive to like kind of read because...
But a Scientologist won't admit that, ever.
No. That's dumb, though, because it's like...
It's plain.
It's obvious.
It's obvious.
I mean, anyone can, like, if you read Crowley's writings and you read L. Ron Hubbard's writings, there's, like, so much that Hubbard ripped off from there.
Yeah, so. and there was actually connections between them. I mean, L. Ron Hubbard, before he made Scientology, was hanging out with a bunch of people that were into this shit. Yeah. You know, damn Satanist, magician, fucking rocket scientists down in damn L.A. blowing themselves up and swapping wives and stuff. LRH was L. Ron Hubbard.
That's like Jack Parsons.
Jack Parsons. They were.
Somebody asked us to do a show about him too. That's like shit. I should have thrown him on this show, but I didn't think about it.
It's just proof. Just because you're a rocket scientist doesn't mean you're not a sorcerer.
You can be both things. Why not?
Yeah, right. You could believe in some crazy shit.
Well, yeah, some people do. It's like, just because you're smart in one thing doesn't mean you're smart in everything.
But who am I to say believing in crazy shit? I mean, I fucking saw a poltergeist.
True.
You know?
That's true.
So who am I to call bullshit on magic? But if magic works, it's because you've psyched yourself up into it. And then all of a sudden, some psionic abilities happen.
I think it can work if you believe that it will work. Yeah. To an extent. I mean, obviously there's some stuff that I think is impossible, but...
That's not the product that those guys were selling to fucking rubes, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? They were selling something that they needed to make money with. Yeah. Like astrology or something.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, Crowley actually ended up purchasing Boleskine House from the Fraser family in 1899. Now, at that time, the house was actually called the Manor of Boleskine and Abertarf, because that was the name of the local parish that it was in. Now, Crowley had bought this house because he thought it was the ideal place to sequester himself away, where he was going to perform a series of operations known as the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. He got this from a grimoire called the Book of Abramelin. Now, this book, actually, the story in it, it's about an Egyptian mage named Abraham, or Abramelin, and he teaches a system of magic to his acolyte, who another guy named Abraham of Worms in Germany. This guy was supposedly a real guy. They think that he lived from 1362 to 1458. Now, this book, it's a real book. It originally was 12 manuscripts and 1 printed edition. The earliest manuscripts are 2 versions from 1608. The first printed version was in German and dates from 1725. So Crowley was apparently very interested in this book, in this text, and he wanted to do this particular ritual that was in this grimoire. Now, he had been searching for a house with the qualities that Boleskine possessed. I saw a documentary about it, and like a friend of his or someone that knew a lot about him or something like that was saying that he had been looking for this property for about a year. Now, he says in his book, The Confessions of Aleister Crowley, that the first thing you needed to do this ritual was a house in a more or less secluded situation. He wanted a door opening to the north from the room where the oratory was, like where you were going to do the ritual. Outside the door, there had to be room to construct a terrace that was covered with river sand. And the terrace had to end with like a building that was like a lodge, and that's where the spirits were supposed to congregate, like in this building. So when he found Boleskine House, it was kind of like seemed perfect for his needs because it was kind of like far away from everybody else. It had north-facing doors and whatnot. So he actually moves into the house, kind of sets aside the southwestern half of the house for the ritual, and he put the terrace in and the lodge in, and like I said, you can still see it's kind of all sand in the front, even from back in the day. And then he set up his oratory with, these big mirrors and all this other kind of stuff. Now, this house, he considered it what they would call a thelemic Qibla, which I saw this one thing that called it a sort of like a Mecca, like for esotericism, or a focal point for mystical energy. And I think even nowadays, people that are still acolytes of Crowley, I think they even like the way that, people would like bow towards Mecca or whatever, that they'll bow toward Boleskine, you know what I mean? It's in that direction. So this was supposed to be not just a house, but like kind of like a center for like spiritual energy, I guess. Now, when he got the house all set up, he starts the ritual. Like I said, this is a complicated ritual. It was supposed to take like 6 months or something like that. And you had to do like all this shit beforehand. Like you
So it takes 6 months.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's like, yeah, it's like this big long fucking thing. And like even before that, you had to like be celibate. You had to like no alcohol. You had to like do like fasting and all this other kind of stuff like beforehand.
Okay, so all right, kind of making a little more sense with me because think about it.
Yeah.
The magic that he's talking about is not you do this and you'll get what you want by some unknown mechanism. He's saying you have to do this long process.
Yeah.
That's tedious.
Yeah.
Well, what's going to happen is it's going to be kind of like a situation like meditation.
Yeah.
Or very intense extended prayer. That is going to put you into an altered state of awareness because you're concentrating and focusing or relaxing or something to allowing something to happen through faith.
Yeah.
That this is a faith thing. It's not so much what you're doing, it's the task.
Yeah.
And the length of the task. To get the results that you want, which okay.
Which, like I said,
if magic works, it's because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's because of the mindset you've been put into, an altered state of consciousness.
And that's what I meant when I said that I think that he actually was a true believer in this stuff, because it's like, why would you subject yourself to something this tedious, something this difficult that takes so long? You know what I mean? And like I said,
equivalent to a Tibetan monk sitting there and saying Om for fucking 30 days.
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And you know what it reminds me of, and I don't know if I've recommended this movie, but there was a horror movie that came out in 2016, 2017, something like that, called A Dark Song. Yeah. It's a British horror movie. And it's actually a similar kind of thing. It's like this woman that goes to this magician. It's set in the modern day. But because she wants to bring her son back from the dead, I believe. Yeah. So she goes to this magician, and he basically says that he locks her. They're locked up in this house for like 6 months or a year or whatever. And they're doing this type of ritual where it's just like every day they have to get up, and she has to like, she does all kind of like food purges and fasting, and like she has to sit in one place, without moving for like hours and hours of time. So it's like this big long.
Yeah, it's like taxing on the mind and the body. Extended periods of like suffering and a certain types of emotional arousal is bringing this about. You know what I mean? It's basically mind altering.
Yeah, because it's like
Right.
bringing you out of
You're right.
yourself.
Some people have said that mind-altering drugs can bring about paranormal phenomenon.
Yeah.
For instance, who's the guy that does a big podcast? He talks about ayahuasca all the time.
Who, Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan. He talks about that ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And that you're talking to alien fucking souls and stuff. It sounds very interesting.
I mean, I'm
But
sure
it's-
it's cool, and it's like I'd be intrigued to try it. The only thing that I wouldn't want is like I've heard that it makes you feel like shit on toast.
Oh
like,
yeah,
the
they
day
say you're
after.
sick through the whole thing.
Yeah, which that does
Yeah.
not sound like a fun
And
time.
you got to go somewhere to the Yucatan to go
Yeah.
get that. With some tribal fucking.
I mean,
people that give it to you.
even
I'd do
other hallucinogenic drugs that make you feel shitty
Yeah.
the next day. It's like that is bad, but it's like not as bad as I've heard.
I think Joe said it
ayahuasca
makes you
is.
feel shitty at the time.
See, that
that
just
you're
doesn't
sitting
sound
there-
like a good time to
Sitting
me.
out there, you get you really bad diarrhea, you vomit.
I've
You
heard
get
that
really
as well.
sick, and then evidently that goes away, and then you have like this extended period where you're like getting messages from an alternate dimension.
Yeah.
And he says it checked out.
Okay.
That's what he says. All the stuff that he was told checked out.
I mean, I can
And then
see
if you
why
did
you'd
it
want to
again-
do it, but
And then when you do it again, evidently the same souls you spoke to welcome you back as if they were waiting for you. And that's
spooky.
fucking weird, yeah. I don't know anybody that can get it here.
Yeah, I've never. I don't know anyone that has
It'd be
taken
illegal.
it. Well, obviously.
But evidently down in the Yucatan on those reservations, it's not.
Yeah.
People are going down there to go do it.
To go do it, yeah, because it's not.
And they say it's not recreational, evidently. It's
That's what I
fucking-
mean. You would only do that if you were like really
Right.
wanted like an enlightening,
You're going
like
to
a
go fucking
spiritual
walk through the
enlightenment.
spirit world,
right?
talking about like an Indian.
Which I get that. I get that. But yeah, just I don't know if I'd want to do it bad enough to like have to go through like all the vomiting and pooping and whatnot.
Well, you know me. I got no problem vomiting.
You would do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
fucking right.
He
You know I'd do that shit.
The
Wrapping fucking stuff
the funny
around
thing
my-
about him and vomiting is that he's very, very like calm about
I
it.
talk when I'm vomiting. It says, excuse me, hold on. And I'm vomit.
Yeah, he'll just and he can like he'll just be like, yeah, I think I have to throw up.
Yeah.
And then he'll just like go to a place and he'll throw up
Yeah.
and then he'll come back and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't get upset about it. It's just-
I do. I try not to like as
Yeah.
hard as I can, but sometimes
I've been throwing up since I was a kid. I got a lot.
Me
of
too, but I hate
experience.
it.
I got a lot of experience.
I really hate throwing up. So I try to avoid
Well,
it whenever
usually if I have to
possible.
throw up, it feels good throwing up.
Yeah.
To me, you know what I mean?
That's true.
The fucking Romans did it all the time. They go to the fucking
vomitorium.
vomitorium and stick feathers down there and throw up.
Because they just wanted to eat some more.
Eat some more.
They were like
Hey.
bulimics.
No, that's a good idea. That's a fucking sign. That's a sign of fucking tremendous fucking opulence and wealth.
Yeah. You have so much food that you can't even eat it all
You
in one
can't
sitting.
eat it all. So what you do is you eat and you go, man, that shit was good. Let me go throw this up and we'll eat some more.
I'm not done with the deliciousness
Yeah.
yet.
That's right. Talk about wagging your dick. So you're like, fuck, man. That was good. Let's go eat some more. Blah. And then they'd have a fucking slave do it. Some blonde, blue-haired-eyed German girl slave fucking stick a fucking feather down your throat so you can throw up and you'd be talking nice to everybody while you're throwing up and then go back out there. But you see, the Romans were weird. They'd have the communal toilets and sit on a toilet and fucking crap and talking to each other.
See, that's crazy to me. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
as big as a social event. Fucking, pinching loaves and talking about it.
Conversations on the can.
Yeah.
With the ancient Romans.
Then you got somebody else scrubbing your ass afterwards and shit.
This is the life.
Yeah. The standards.
Reached over there with a corn cob.
Yeah, the standards were different back then.
Obviously.
Actually, it wasn't a corn cob. It was a bunch of cotton on the end of this
I know.
damn stick, and they'd wash it.
Yeah.
So they wash it from one person to the next.
Yep.
Ain't that some shit?
I'm starting to feel
Literally.
like throwing up now. I have to
Okay.
stop the show so I can throw up. But yeah, so all right, so the ritual that Crowley was going to perform, like I said, it was a 6-month-long ritual. Now, I think the press at the time and the press even to the present day, I think they kind of they make it sound like he just like went into this house for this ritual and he was going to summon demons. That's not entirely correct. What he was actually doing, and even what he did, like even before he began the ritual, he did like this kind of invocation, because they have all his diaries from the time and everything like that, because he was like keeping track of what he was doing. He says in there, like in the invocation in his diary before he started the ritual, that he made a promise not to offend God and not to, quote unquote, work ill against his neighbors. So he wasn't like trying to do anything bad or anything. So what he was trying to do was he was trying to evoke the Lords of Darkness, which sounds bad. It sounds like demons. But what he was trying to do by invoking them was he was trying to get them to serve the good. So he was essentially invoking demons in order to like turn them to the good side or get them to do good instead of evil.
Yeah, that's what the Aztecs did.
Right. So it's like, so it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to summon a bunch of demons and like rain hell down at it. But that's wasn't what his intention was. So he was hoping that by the end of this ritual, he would summon, they call it a guardian angel, but it's more like a higher, like an enlightened version of yourself, kind of.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Talking about a what do they call it? A daemon.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And that this being would kind of lead him to enlightenment.
Yeah.
Now, the ritual is supposed to be very dangerous because obviously when you're summoning evil forces or demons or whatever, and you're trying to turn them toward the good, clearly they don't really want to do that and are probably going to put up a fight, and you're going to have like all these kind of problems and stuff like that, which is why this was a very taxing, very exacting ritual, that you had to have like a lot of preparation. And
for any of you new listeners, I believe in the daemon fucking concept because I had a near-death experience with a motorcycle when I was in the Army right before I was re-enlisted. So I was in a coma for a couple weeks. I'd had this near-death experience, went to heaven with the life review and the tunnel heaven life review, seeing some weird kind of spiritual ancestors, people that knew you, and they knew you from throughout time, and there was a higher being there that spoke to me that wasn't a god, but it was a different version of me. It was like a super me. It went throughout time as a daemon. It's exactly what they're talking about. That's what I saw.
So I think that's what he's talking about when he says guardian angel. I think he means like super me, like you said.
Right, it's like super me. But you're just from one lifetime, and the super me is from with the all lifetimes through outside the space-time continuum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the ultimate you. That's weird, but so I guess people had that experience, came back from it, and recorded it, and that idea became a meme, I guess.
Yeah.
In occult writings. But that's one of the things that you can feel when you have a near-death experience. I'm not the only one that felt that.
Yeah.
Some people don't feel that or don't have that experience, but other ones do.
Yeah, because some of like kind of near-death experiences are kind of all over the map.
It's like you're playing a video game, okay, and you're looking at the little character on the screen, and then all of a sudden you realize you're that character at the screen, and it turns around and looks at you through the screen, and you go, "Who's that?" It's like that.
It's like you're just the avatar, but like
That's right.
is like
you
your
look back
super
and you
you.
see the player.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean, and that's the relationship.
Yeah, that's actually probably a good way of putting it. But yeah, I think that's what Crowley was. That was like the ultimate goal of this ritual that he was doing.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, like I said, this ritual was taken, 6 months, so it's like kind of a lot of shit that he's going through every day. Now, in his diary, he started recording like all this weird shit that started happening around the house while the ritual was in progress. He said in his diary, "One day, I came back from shooting rabbits on the hill and found a Catholic priest in my study." I hate when that happens. Yeah. Call the exterminator. He had come to tell me that my lodge keeper, a total abstainer for 20 years, had been raving drunk for 3 days and had tried to kill his wife and children. So, so apparently, like, all this crazy shit started going on while he was doing the ritual, presumably because he was conjuring up demons, even though he supposedly had good intentions for doing it. But I guess it's, like, never good to, like, conjure demons up. Because he also said that he had hired this guy to do labor around the grounds of the house. That guy also apparently went nuts and tried to kill Aleister Crowley. He also had another lodge keeper. I don't think this is the same one that got drunk and tried to kill his wife and kid. But he had a lodge keeper named Hugh Gillies who had a whole bunch of, like, terrible shit happen to him. Like, 2 of his kids died and all this other kind of stuff. Like, bad shit happened. So, now, problem was, what you're supposed to do when you do this ritual, you're supposed to do it until it's done. And you're not supposed to, like, leave in the middle. You're not supposed to, like, be interrupted or anything like that. However, while he was doing the ritual, he gets a message from Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers, who at the time was the leader of the Golden Dawn, and Aleister Crowley's master. Now, Mathers was in Paris and had evidently gotten himself into a little bit of trouble. What was going on was that the members of the Golden Dawn were kind of getting pissed off with Mathers' leadership, and also, like, his kind of close relationship with Crowley, because I guess some of them didn't like Crowley, so they were just, like, this big, like, conflict there. Also, I feel like the adepts, you know, the people that were in the Golden Dawn, they were, like, they didn't like that Mathers was kind of, like, he said that he was the only one that could contact the secret chiefs, you know, like the entities that were supposedly had all the knowledge and everything. So the people that were in the Golden Dawn said, you know, we don't really need him to do that. He seems like kind of, you know, autocratic. We want to contact them ourselves. Like, we don't want him to be a middleman. So there was, like, kind of this conflict. It was a lot of them were leaving and, like, wanted to form their own temples and stuff like that. So Mathers was kind of, like, getting upset. It was like everything was getting chaotic. So he sends a message to Crowley, because Crowley had once told him, apparently, that it's like, you know, hey, if you ever need me or if you ever need my money or anything like that, just call me and I'll be there to help you. So Mathers, you know, calls him up, not on the phone, and obviously, but it's like sends him a letter and is like, hey, remember that time when you said that if I ever needed help or needed money or anything? Well, now's that time. So you got to come help me out. Now, even though Crowley knew that it was very dangerous to leave the ritual unfinished, he figured, well, I have to go help Mathers out. He even wrote at the time in his diary, he wrote, as far as I was concerned, Mathers was my only link with the secret chiefs to whom I was pledged. I wrote to him offering to place myself and my fortune unreservedly at his disposal. If that meant giving up the Abramelin operation for the present, all right. So he basically, like, he makes this big deal about this fucking ritual, and then he's just like, well, I gotta stop in the middle, like, you know, because my friend needed my help and everything like that. Where are we on time? We're actually at an hour, so I think we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Aleister Crowley. We'll talk a little bit about stuff that happened at Boleskine House subsequently, like after he moved out. We'll talk a little bit about Jimmy Page and his purchase of the house and stuff like that. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Yeah. Can Mommy please have the camera? Can I have it? No, I can't have it. You're gonna have it? Oh. It's Pookie's camera, that's right. Oh, Pookie. Look at this. Yeah? Oh, now she's gonna lick her butt. Okay. You're so classy. So classy. Yeah. Yeah. What you doing? What do you have to say about that? But yeah, get in there. Get in there. Okay. Bye.
You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. Featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carrie Babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident, The Faceless Villain Volume 3 is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999. Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com. and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history. And we're back, talking about Boleskine House and Aleister Crowley. We forgot to mention when we were doing the shout-outs that we sent out the shirts for our $20 note patrons that got back to me about sizes and stuff. This is what the shirt looks like.
Yeah.
Right here.
Boobs not included.
Boobs not included.
There you go. It's a mashup between 13 o'clock and Friday the 13th,
yeah.
part 1.
Yeah.
Read it says the hour of the weird and unexplained.
Yeah, in the Friday the 13th font that was on one of the posters.
So, shirts $20.
Yeah.
Shipping inside the continental United States is about $5, so $25 for a shirt.
Yeah.
Shipping to UK, expensive. What was that? $15?
Some were 15 and some were 24.
Okay, so if you want to go out to the UK, contact us directly. Maybe we can work something out.
Yeah, because
that's quite expensive.
Yeah, we mailed some out to the patrons and
right.
I don't know why it's like some of them were cheaper than others. Like it seemed like a big some of them were $14.95 and then some of them were $24 even.
UK's profiteering off that mail, man.
Although like I said, some of the ones to the UK were only $14.95.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a difference in weight. I didn't think there was that much of a drastic difference in weight. Maybe it was just because some of the packages were bigger than others.
I don't know.
Because some of the envelopes I had were like 8.5 by 11, and some were like 9 by 13.
Probably had something to do with where it went. Like Ireland wasn't that expensive. One of them went to Ireland.
Yeah. No, I think that one was 24.
Was that the 24?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember.
I thought that one was only like 14, 15
We mailed so many. I think it had to do with the size of the envelopes. Because some of the envelopes were smaller.
Yeah.
And some of the envelopes were big.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Aleister Crowley. And like I said, he was in the middle of this Abramelin ritual that he was doing. And he gets called to Paris to bail out his friend, Mathers. His master, head of the Golden Dawn at the time. So he interrupts his ritual unwisely and goes to Paris to help his friend out. Ironically, even though Aleister Crowley, because the story goes that the reason that Boleskine House had so many hauntings and horrible things about it that supposedly happened later on was because Crowley left the ritual undone, in the middle, he had, because, anybody that's into, magic or the occult or anything like that knows that when you summon demons or spirits or whatnot, in one of these rituals, the last thing you're supposed to do is, get rid of them. You're supposed to, dispel them at the end. And apparently he didn't do that. So the story grew up around the house that it was because he had left in the middle without finishing the ritual that all of these spirits still stayed around the house. Now, like I said, ironically, even though Crowley had interrupted this very important ritual to go to Mathers, apparently the two of them had a falling out much later on, and in fact, in Crowley's novel Moonchild, he actually wrote Mathers in there as a villain. And Mathers actually ended up dying about a year after that. I think it was in 1918. It's weird because they're not sure how he died. It was probably because, there was a flu epidemic going on at the time, so he probably died in that, but there's no cause of death listed on his death certificate, so I thought that was a little weird. So after Aleister Crowley left for Paris to help out Mathers, people who lived around the area began to complain that there were all these dark clouds hanging over Boleskine House, and that there was this really creepy oppressive feeling, and people were starting to avoid it because there was bad shit going on up there. Now after Crowley helped Mathers out and he comes back to Boleskine, and he said that as soon as he got back there that he could feel changes, that it felt different when he came back. Apparently one of his proteges that had been at the house helping him out with the ritual presumably had left while he was gone. He also said that he's that the house was unnaturally dark. He's even when the day outside was really sunny, when he was in his study, which had big windows and was a really sunny, brightly lit room, he was in there writing down stuff for the rituals and everything like that. And he's it was so dark in there that he needed artificial light to see, because for some reason, like it was like there was some kind of pall of darkness like around the house, and like the sun couldn't reach in or something like that, is what he was saying. He also said that he started seeing like shadowy shapes like outside, like on the lodge and like the terrace, which is where the spirits were supposed to congregate and everything. He said he would like see them out of the corner of his eye. And he said in his diary that it was like really hard to explain them. He's like, they weren't really shapes, but they were like almost like your vision. He said your vision suffering some interference.
Well, that sounds like as
if they weren't even objects. That's what he said.
That sounds like that thing that I saw at Math Mountain.
Yeah, it did sound like that when he described it. He said
blue haze and clear balls that you couldn't really focus on.
But he said these were almost opaque. But he said that they weren't. He says, this is a quote from his diary. It says, "It was as if they belonged to an order of matter which affected the sight without informing it."
That's exactly what.
That's what he said.
That's exactly what I tried to describe to you.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay. All right.
But yeah, he said he started seeing that kind of stuff like around the house.
Yeah.
Like I said, there was a oppressive atmosphere. There was like, it seemed like dark all the time, like they couldn't get the sunlight to come in. Apparently there was like just this really, really strong winds, like gale force winds that would blow through the rooms, even though the weather was nice outside. People would see like weird figures, like shadowy figures, like out of the corner of my eye, of their eyes and stuff like that.
That's weird.
I'm
not doubting that. I'd have to see it for myself. But,
yeah.
But he's describing is familiar to me. So
yeah.
Okay. Whether or not they manifested that themselves using, you know what I mean, their own mind, or if it was something from another dimension coming in, you know, there's no way of knowing, I guess.
Yeah.
I tend to think, well, okay, I'm just going to leave it up to you. I'm going to talk about it. I wasn't there.
Well, like I said, this was a very long time ago. It's like, you know what I mean?
There.
He also wrote in his diary, and this is a direct quote from his diary. He says, "On my return to Boleskine, I started to prepare once more for the great operation." So he was going to like restart the ritual. I don't know if he was starting over from the beginning or if you can like come back where you left off. I don't know how that works. "Suddenly, I knew that a rival magician was attacking me." Now, in the diary, he said that it was a magician. He knew, I named him before, but I don't know who it was that he was talking about. "At this time, I kept a pack of bloodhounds, and he succeeded, the rival magician, he succeeded in killing them off one after another. There was absolutely no sign of any sort of disease. They simply died. The servants, too, were continually becoming ill, one with this complaint, one with the other. Action was necessary. One morning we heard screams and oaths from the direction of the kitchen. One of the workmen had become suddenly maniacal and attacked my wife, whose name was Rose, that's who he was married to at the time, who was making her usual morning inspection. We overpowered him and shut him in the coal cellar until the police arrived." So apparently people were getting weird illnesses, the dogs were dying off, people were starting to act crazy pants, and they're putting it down to him not, ending the ritual properly and like messing it up and like leaving in the middle. There's another story that went around about this time period. This one was about a local butcher who came to the house to get the meat order. I guess he came there like every so often. So he comes to get the meat order while the ritual was going on. And he apparently kept ringing the doorbell because I guess he was like, I know somebody's in there, goddammit. So he kept like ringing the doorbell. Crowley got really mad because he was like messing up his concentration. So he picks up a piece of paper really quickly. He writes the meat order on it and then gives it to the butcher, like sticks it under the door and like gives it to the butcher. It's like, okay, here, just go away. Now, apparently the paper that he wrote it on had a spell written on it. And shortly afterwards, the butcher was cutting up the meat for Crowley's order back at the butcher shop and apparently cut all his fingers off of his right hand with the cleaver. So that's, I've also heard that he cut his whole hand off. I'm not really sure what part of that is true, but apparently it's just because Crowley was so pissed off and I don't think he meant to like write the meat order on the spell. It's just he grabbed the first piece of paper because he's like, God damn, that motherfucker won't stop ringing the doorbell. So apparently the spell like made the butcher like cut all his fingers off.
That sounds like a Crowley
I'm just
tale.
saying.
That sounds like a
sounds
tale.
like a story.
Okay.
It's a good story, though.
That's the kind of tale that Crowley would tell.
Yeah.
He did that kind of shit constantly.
Yeah.
But I appreciate his imagination though.
Yeah, that's like I said.
I mean?
That's a good story.
That was part of his PR.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Crowley
he
did
kind
that
of
a lot.
liked, like I said, even though I don't really think that he had any intention to do anyone any harm, I think that he thought, he seemed to find it amusing that other people thought that he was like this really horrible, like evil. And he encouraged that, I feel like.
Little stories like that, you know what I mean? Also, L. Ron Hubbard had a bunch of stories about that. Well, this happened, and, they didn't listen to what I said, his mouth and shit. They didn't listen to what I said, and, hey, that's what happened to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? A lot of these sorcerers fucking have little stories like that.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go into sorcery, like, as a career
That's right.
path,
You have to have some stories.
you got to have some stories like that
Yeah.
to kind of build up your rep.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Right.
if you're... Sorcerers are nothing without their reputation, right?
Even Elvis had those stories.
Yeah, and
well
he wasn't
known.
even
He
a sorcerer.
Yeah, well,
except in Mississippi.
In Mississippi,
like
he was
he's like a
crossed into
messiah.
sorcerer. He's a messiah.
Yeah.
He could stop it from raining.
Yeah.
While
Was that like
while
the
he
only-
was driving?
Only while he was driving, or
He was
in
in the back.
addition?
I think he was in the back in his convertible Cadillac.
Yeah.
And it started raining a little bit, and he said, "Man, I hope it needs to stop raining," and it stopped. And
everyone went,
The Memphis mob fucking remembered that. And
Elvis
that's oh shit, yeah.
That's probably how that shit gets started. It's like something
Yeah.
totally mundane. It's like,
Yeah.
and then it just gets
Elvis could
passed
stop
on.
it. He could stop it from raining.
Well, that one time he did.
When I was a kid, when I was a kid up in Mississippi, fucking other kids that I knew in Mississippi, their parents told them that Elvis had the power to make it stop raining, because that was the stories that they told them.
Yeah, that's like the only magical power he had, though. He couldn't like heal the sick or anything.
Trying to think.
Did he have like any other kind of Jesus powers?
Well, you don't need Jesus powers when you have Jesus status.
True.
You know what I'm talking about?
I'm just saying, like, of all the superpowers, it's like, hey, I can make it stop raining. Everybody's like, whoop-de-doo.
Right now, that's all I can remember.
Oh, okay.
It's just that
That's
one,
why I
that
was
he can make it
asking.
stop. He can stop it from raining. Yeah. There might be some more. I'm sure you can look it up. I'm sure you can Google all
Can
kinds
you, like,
of Elvis
shoot
lore.
lightning out of his...
No.
fingers
he
or
couldn't do
anything?
that. No, he couldn't do that. But he probably healed some children.
Yeah, I feel like healing,
sure-
that's kind of like...
I'm sure there's some stories of him.
That's your pretty, like, pedestrian,
that
like,
he goes
magical
to
power.
that he goes to a hospital with kids with terminal cancer,
And then they were all
healed.
cured,
I'm
yeah.
sure there's stories like that out there.
I
about
bet there
Elvis.
is.
Right.
I'm going to Google that as soon as we stop recording. So,
Well,
yeah,
there's basically a story that he survived death.
true.
I mean, the Elvis sightings are basically them saying, no, he didn't die.
Yeah, he's still...
Yeah, he's still alive.
He's going to live forever. Yeah, so there were some other stories, too. Apparently one of Crowley's housekeepers disappeared mysteriously. Also, another local workman went crazy. So like I said, there's a lot of people that like work at this house and stuff like that, and they're kind of like going mental and stuff. Now, apparently he didn't finish the ritual this time either. I'm not entirely sure why. But after he came back from his Paris sojourn and kind of got a little bit into trying to restart the ritual, and like apparently all these horrible things were happening, like with the butcher, presumably, and like all these people going crazy and like them seeing all this crazy shit. So he actually stopped spending most of his time at the house. So not long after that, he actually went to New York, and then he went to Egypt. Now in Egypt, he did the ritual again there, like supposedly to like contact his, guardian angel or whatever. Now he said that time it was successful. But at that point, it seems like he wasn't really into Boleskine anymore. And he actually ended up leaving the property for good in 1913. He moved to a cottage elsewhere. And as I mentioned earlier, practitioners of Thelema are still instructed to turn and face north to Boleskine when they're doing certain magical ceremonies. Now, after Crowley left the house, it sat empty for a little bit, but then, now interestingly, the Wikipedia page says that an American actor named George Raft bought the house after World War I. This is not correct. George Raft he was a real actor. He was an American actor. He played a lot of gangsters and stuff like that. But the actor that actually bought Boleskine House was actually named George Sanders. He was an English actor, kind of known for playing a lot of cad sort of characters, like rogue sort of characters. He even wrote an autobiography called The Memoirs of a Professional Cad. He actually wasn't English, sorry, he was Russian, but he moved to England in 1917. Now, he apparently he became an actor in the 1930s. He was in like a shit ton of movies, but most people would probably recognize him from All About Eve. He played Addison DeWitt. He was also married to Zsa Zsa Gabor for a time, and later married the older sister, Magda Gabor. So he was married to two separate.
Oh, they
not
all
at the same time.
The Gabors all looked alike.
They did kind of.
They all looked alike. It didn't
I have
matter.
to say.
It didn't matter. They
So-
were cute. They were cute.
Yeah.
They were really cute. Yeah.
How many of them were there?
A bunch of them.
I don't even know.
bunch
how
of
many
them,
there
and
were.
they
Were like
kinda-
the Baldwins. It's
Yeah.
like,
They stormed Hollywood. And they got shows and shit, you know.
I remember Zsa Zsa and a couple of the other ones, like being on fucking those
I remember when
variety
Zsa
shows
Zsa
and
got
stuff.
fat and old.
Yeah, I
and
remember
would
that.
fucking drink out of a flask and get fucking loaded in Hollywood and like slap cops that pulled her over.
Yeah, that was a big
How-
story. I remember
yeah.
her slapping the cops.
Slapping the cop. How dare you pull me over? Well, she was like, what was she, a countess?
I don't remember.
I think she was. She was some kind of fucking Romanian or Hungarian. I think she was Hungarian nobility.
She
or
didn't want
something.
these little people like pushing
Yeah,
her
and
around.
she'd slap a cop, man. Fucking slap a. It didn't work, though. You know.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter who you are. You
No.
probably
It
don't
did-
want to
it
slap
didn't
a cop.
work,
Just
but-
a pro tip.
But she got street cred for that shit.
Yeah.
You don't pull over Zsa Zsa. I'm Zsa Zsa. Pow. You know. I'm Zsa Zsa. Pow.
See, if I pulled that shit, they'd probably just shoot me in the face.
Yeah. She's lucky that the cop knew exactly who she was.
Yeah, he probably
Yeah.
just thought it was funny.
They locked her ass up, I think. She bonded out.
You kind of have.
But yeah.
So George Sanders owned it for a while, and we'll get back to him in a minute, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, because Boleskine is on Loch Ness, you know there has to be a little bit of a Loch Ness Monster connection.
It was Princess Zsa Zsa. Wasn't she a princess? Or maybe she
see,
just called herself Princess Zsa Zsa.
Yeah, because anybody can do that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
No one's going to check.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'd have to check with my mom about that. She would know. That was that generation.
Yeah, I don't remember. Like, I remember her. I remember her being on... Was she on, like, Hollywood Squares or some shit?
Yeah.
I remember her.
She
or
did
those,
that.
like, game shows, those old...
She
like,
did Hollywood Squares. She had a couple of sitcoms. She was at Green Acres. She married a bunch of like famous guys in rapid succession.
Yeah.
Famous Hollywood guys. Yeah, and she was kind of like a professional girlfriend or a professional wife, I guess you could say.
Yeah. She
But-
would just marry a famous guy, get the fame,
Yeah.
get some diamonds, and
Yeah.
then get the fuck out.
Yeah, and she was like, I think she was known for that going all the way back to the '60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was cute though.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was cute.
And like I said, there was a bunch of those Gabors. I can't even
Yeah,
remember.
Zsa Zsa and Ava and
Well, Magda, there was one.
Magda. Yeah,
Maybe it was just 3.
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like there was more of them than that. Like
They
I said,
all
it's
looked
like,
about the same.
It's like the Baldwins. There's like they're
Yeah.
endless, and I don't even remember.
They were
how
just
many of them
looking
there were.
blondes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so like I said, in the 1930s, when the sightings of the Loch Ness Monster first started taking place, they actually asked Crowley about the Loch Ness Monster because he lived on the loch, obviously. And he kind of wrote this big long piece that was published in a newspaper over there called the Empire News. Now, I don't think he had ever seen it, but he was talking about how interested he was and everything like that. Now, interestingly, though, there was this one guy named Frederick William Holliday, and he is kind of a Loch Ness Monster guy, cryptozoologist type of dude, and he published a couple books about the Loch Ness Monster. And in the 1970s, he seemed to come to the conclusion that because some people had described the Loch Ness Monster as having some aspects of a supernatural creature, he began to speculate that maybe the Loch Ness Monster had been summoned by Aleister Crowley.
Oh, here we go.
in this ritual.
Yeah.
That he, like, maybe the Loch Ness Monster was one of the demons that he brought up.
Well, there's no evidence for a Loch Ness Monster.
No.
There's no food for a Loch Ness Monster, so therefore the Loch Ness Monster must have been summoned. It's a supernatural being.
We'll see,
This
and
is
that
the-
would explain it.
This is the same as
Saying that Bigfoot's from space or a ghost.
Bigfoot. Spiritual Bigfoot. Yeah, I guarantee you, all this fucking extra dimensional Bigfoot, it's all bullshit. That's just because they can't
'Cause there's
find
no
footprints.
evidence for
There's no
it.
evidence. There's no footprints. But I'm not saying that there is no fucking Bigfoot. I've heard some compelling stories about Bigfoot.
Like I said, I'd be...
But you're talking about up in Washington State and Canada where fucking people haven't fucking been... Where there have been very few people in the past 15,000 years. You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe. But, man, I don't know. You would think with all the infrared technology and spy satellites that they can probably see every inch of the Earth and every living creature on the Earth, and you would think NSA or one of the spy fucking satellites would have seen something like a humanoid out in the forest in Washington State.
Yeah, it's like, I'm
Yeah.
not... Like I said, of all the, cryptids or paranormal stuff or whatever, obviously the, Bigfoot is, like, the least crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
because he would just be a big ape or, like, a man...
Like a
man-like ape,
Australopithecus,
yeah.
like a Gigantopithecus.
So... I'm not saying that there is or there isn't one, but
Although
I'm just saying...
I think orang pendek is more likely than a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's impossible.
I don't think it's impossible either. Because like I said, it's,
Yeah.
it's a creature if he lived out in those...
Right.
I mean, there's lots of creatures that they,
Yeah.
that they're only just finding now. Those, like, that live out in some remote area.
I'd love to see one.
As far as Loch Ness Monster, though, I don't know. Because, man, there's a road right around there. There's, like, people live there and shit like that. And I just feel like... there's
a big problem.
It's a big lake, but
There's a big problem.
not big enough for there to be a breeding population.
There has to be a breeding population of them. All right. And in order for there to be a breeding population, there has to be a lot of food for them to eat. There's no food in Loch Ness.
Because it's cold as shit.
It's cold as shit. There's nothing growing really on the bottom. It's muddy and murky down there in certain areas, but they've sent fucking submersible cameras to show you that the bottom's barren.
Yeah.
There isn't much of an ecosystem in Loch Ness. It's cold. And if there were a breeding populations of these damn fucking dinosaurs, they'd be up on the surface fucking taking sun and splashing around, screwing each other in public. They'd be doing all kinds of fucking cool shit. You know what I mean?
Like they do.
Because they're just animals. You know what I mean?
Loch Ness Monster fucking.
Yeah, they're just animals. They wouldn't be shy. Well, why would they be shy?
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
especially if they were that size.
Yeah, they're the
What do
size
they-
of elephants.
They
Like,
don't need to
fuck
hide
you.
from nobody.
Yeah, they're laying up on the surface.
Like,
with-
I'll just sit on you. I don't
yeah,
care.
they wouldn't have any natural enemies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you'd need a large amount. You'd need a large biomass to feed them.
Yeah.
And it's not there.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And there's only one that had been dead. And if there was only 2 or 3, they'd be inbred and they'd die out. It wouldn't matter. You need like 50 of those fuckers.
At least.
Yeah.
Well,
And you couldn't hide that. So
but like I said,
you got to use reason and logic.
if Aleister Crowley did indeed summon them during his
Yeah.
Abramelin ritual, then that would explain it, because it's a supernatural being and
Yeah.
therefore does not need to eat or mate. So there's just one of them and he's just whooshing around in the
Right.
water and he's like a demon or something. They'll come up with anything, man.
Yeah.
Just because he happened to live there and there was that legend about, he didn't finish the ritual and like all the
used to-
demons hung around,
I used to sit back and fantasize that maybe there was a Loch Ness Monster.
It would be cool if there was.
Yeah, but because some of the programs were so awesome.
They
and
really
so
were.
convincing and so
Yeah.
creepy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, I bet you that bitch is down in there. But it doesn't make any sense from a logical standpoint.
Yeah.
Understanding how biology works.
I mean, if it would be different if they said, Loch Ness Monster and he's in like the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, right.
It's
yeah.
like, I could buy that.
Right, but not in that little lake.
But in that one little lake, I
No.
don't think so.
No, and what's funny is that there are stories that are equally as cool that we know are true based on the damn drawings and woodcuts from the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And knowing how fish are. There were times in the Middle Ages where some of those lakes had catfish fucking big enough that they were fucking huge.
Yeah.
Huge fucking catfish type varieties. Where they were the size of cows.
Yeah.
And people thought that those woodcuts, they couldn't be. Oh no, hell yeah, they got that big. Because they didn't have fishing blocking. They didn't have fishing technology back then. the only way to... So a fish would grow to immense size, you know. I mean, I don't know how long some of those fish can live. You know, that might be
Yeah.
100. A catfish gets fucking huge, okay? Well, how big do they get when they're 150 years old? If you're not catching them with rod and reel, because they didn't have that back then,
Yeah.
a fish could grow to 150 years of age.
Yeah.
And the only way you could catch it was by draining a lake or running a big old drag net through it. That's usually how they got it. Because they were showing some of the woodcuts of a damn cow next to a catfish, and they were the same size. And they were
Well-
like, wait a minute, no, it can't be. But what's his name? The guy who was Jeremy Wade?
That's what I was
Jeremy
just
Wade
going to say.
proved that
On
no.
River Monsters.
Yeah.
Well, he's caught some catfish almost that big.
Almost that size.
So,
Yeah.
you know, the thought that there's some, like, a little bit bigger than that, that's not crazy to think about.
And they weren't that
some
much
of,
bigger, you
Yeah,
know.
some of the fucking catfish he's caught were, like, horrifyingly
Yeah.
big.
You know, that a catfish can get as big as a shark.
Yeah.
Basically.
And, like, they was, like, fucking
And
mouth
swallow a
like that.
man.
Like, yeah, they were big enough to swallow a person.
And there were medieval stories of fish in lakes swallowing people, and then people were like, "Oh, that didn't happen. That's medievals fucking making that shit up." Oh hell no! They're talking about a damn catfish.
Yeah,
Spooky when you think about it.
it is kind of. That would be, like, a really
'Cause I've
shitty
been
way to go.
fish catfish in Mississippi and fucking grab catfish out of the water, noodling in them and shit like that. I'm just lucky that there wasn't some monster out there, because there's a lot of guys out there doing it, for generations before me,
Yeah, they got all of them
They
out
got-
of there, so they kind of culled the big ones out.
Well, a catfish couldn't live that long.
Yeah.
Because people were fishing them. We had the technology to fish them, but in the Middle Ages they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't have rod and reel.
So they just got bigger and
They
bigger.
just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
And you'd be like, in the little river washing
Yeah.
out your pantaloons or whatever, and all of a sudden this
No.
big fucking catfish comes up and that's all she wrote. You wouldn't even know what happened to you.
Now, I knew people, I had relatives and knew people in Louisiana, and they would talk about that the fucking most deadliest thing was an alligator gar. And I used to kind of laugh at them, especially the older people, because a gar didn't get that big. But then I found out that, no, back in the 20s and 30s, they had damn paddle boats that would go out there and just electrocute gar on mass.
Yeah.
They're trying to wipe them out because gar got big. They got the size of an alligator.
Yeah.
That theoretically a gar might get to be 12 feet long, and there are things that are like that.
Yeah.
They're like arapaima type stuff. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. And Jeremy Wade's caught some really big
yeah.
arapaima too.
right.
That show
So-
is scary.
I caught some big gar, but they were like maybe 5.5, 6 feet long.
I've seen 5.5, 6 feet.
yeah, but those are evidently the babies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Evidently,
I've never
a
seen
gar
one bigger
can
than
live
that.
to be 50, 60 years old, and you're talking
Yeah.
about like 12, 13 feet, but they don't live that long anymore.
Yeah.
People fish them.
But yeah, I think I used to swim at like a whole bunch of different springs and stuff, and I used to see those gars, but I don't think, like you said, I think the biggest one I ever saw was maybe
If
5 or 6 feet.
people in other countries don't know what a gar is, it's a primitive fish that has a head with a big long snout filled with sharp teeth. They're like needle teeth.
Yeah.
It looks like an alligator head. It's a prehistoric looking fish with gigantic scales on it
Yeah.
and a bunch of fins, almost kind of like an eel.
Yeah.
Kind of like a weird ass eel, but it's not. It's a primitive fish.
Yeah.
And in my day, they didn't get that big, 6 feet,
Yeah.
that's a big fish.
Yeah, it's scary
And
enough.
half of it head,
Yeah.
big old long head. But evidently older people, like my grandparents' generation, they were talking about 12, 13, 14, and rumors of like 20-foot long gar, big enough to kill a man.
Yeah.
I didn't really believe it, but
It's
I
not
found
like
some stuff that
it's not that crazy.
Well, they had some pictures of some shit from the 20s that it was approaching that size.
And like I said, even just watching River Monsters,
Yeah.
and like even the shit that he catches nowadays is terrifying enough. And
There's
you
no-
could imagine that, like, when there wasn't the overfishing problem and shit like that,
Yeah.
and that the fish could have gotten a lot bigger than that.
Well, it's not that it was overfishing. It's that the population of Louisiana was very low back then.
Yeah.
And when people were kind of colonizing the area, just coming into the modern era, they thought those things were a threat. So they actually had these barges that would go out there and just try to wipe them out.
Yeah.
So a lot of the gar that are around today are young. For all we know, this huge gar that they were killing might have been over 100 years old.
Probably. Because, like I said, they don't know how long.
They don't know how long they live.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's go back to talking about Boleskine House. Now, in 1962, Boleskine House gets bought by this guy named Dennis Lorraine. Now, during his time in the house, there was this scam which was called the Great Sausage Scandal. Now, the actor George Sanders was also evidently involved in this somehow. So apparently, I'm not sure entirely, like, the sources differ about when exactly this happened. It was either sometime in the 50s or the 60s, sometime around there. So Dennis Lorraine was supposedly going to set up a company called Loch Ness Foods and say that he was raising pigs at the house, like that he was using it as a pig farm. But he didn't really have a pig farm. I'm not really sure, like, what the end game of this was, but it's like, you know, I'll say I have a pig farm, but I don't have a pig farm. That was kind of like the scam. So he ends up getting the actor George Sanders, like, involved in this, like, I guess to use Boleskine House, like, for the pig farm. You know, and then there was this whole thing. So now apparently what had happened, Dennis Lorraine supposedly bought Boleskine House because his wife, whose name was Molly, she had seen a portrait of a woman named Mary Lorraine in an art gallery in Inverness. Now, Mary Lorraine, who the painting was of, she had been the wife of a previous owner of Boleskine who was named Major Edward Grant. Now, Major Edward Grant fatally shot himself in the head in the house in either 1960 or 1965. I've seen that he shot himself in the study, or also that he shot himself in the room that Aleister Crowley used as his bedroom. Now, this is creepy. They actually had this woman named Anna McLaren, who was the housekeeper for Major Edward Grant and his family. She was 78 years old. And she actually said later on, there was an interview with her in this documentary that she saw. She had like a premonition that Grant was going to die. She said she was out picking vegetables in the garden and that she heard a gunshot from the house. So she runs into the house to see what it was, but there was nobody in there. So then she was like, okay, well, whatever. I guess I'm just hearing things. And then she forgot about it. However, exactly 1 week later at the same time of day, Grant shot himself in the head. Now, the creepy thing was she fucking described this. She was like a little old lady. And she says, this is what she said in the documentary. She said she came up and she's like, I went in the front door. There was this little bone at the front door. They had this little dog named Pickywig.
Pickywig. That's cute.
I know. That was like, that's a cute name. Pickywig,
What's your
the
name
dog.
named Pickywig?
I know. That's almost sounds like that should be Cookie's name. She
Yeah,
looks like a Pickywig.
Sounds like something from fucking the South, like Piggly Wiggly and Piggly. Yeah.
Well, when I was watching her on the documentary, I thought that's what she said. I'm like, their dog was named Piggly Wiggly, but then when I looked it up, I found the quote like, oh, that's Pickywig. So it was like a little bone or something, and Pickywig had the bone like in his mouth, and she's like, oh, where'd you get that from? And she took it out of his mouth and threw it like into the yard, like not thinking about it. So she goes into the house to look, and she sees Grant in the room with his fucking head blown off.
Oh, so that's where the bone came from?
Yes!
Piece of skull, huh?
It was a piece of skull.
Damn.
And it's like she didn't realize it at the time. She's like...
Dog was trying to tell her.
I know, and like she ran out the house, and she said to the wife, she called the police and everything like that, and she's like, he shot himself in the head. And then the detectives came to her and said, yeah, that was a piece of his skull. They actually did search the grounds and they found it, so later on they were able to bury it with the rest of the remains. But it's just like, that was so fucking creepy. It's like, there's just...
Dog was trying to tell her.
She didn't think about it. She just thought it was a bone. She's like, hey, fetch, Pickywig.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, hey, that was the dude's skull because he blew his fucking head off. I'm like, oh, that's horrible. So, yeah. So, apparently, when Dennis and Molly Lorraine lived in this house later on, they apparently had a lot of problems too, which apparently stemmed from this curse or whatever that kind of surrounded the house. They both became alcoholics. The pig farm venture, which they got into, this is what I thought was weird. There was like the whole thing about, there was a scandal, like, oh, we'll have a pig farm, except not really, like we're not going to have any pigs. But apparently they did have pigs, because the story goes that the pigs they kept them in this field, like next to the house. And when the pig farm didn't work out for whatever reason, like they just left the pigs there and the pigs all starved.
What?
You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay.
They abandoned the place and the pigs starved.
Yeah, they just like abandoned it. Now apparently,
Why they didn't let the pigs out?
that's what I mean. It's like they could just root around
Crazy.
in the
Maybe
woods.
they forgot or something.
Maybe so. Or I don't know.
I've seen a lot of abandoned animals and they do fine. I know somebody that abandoned a bunch of goats. Those goats lived for fucking 8, 9 years.
Apparently,
Running around
especially
just eating shit.
especially pigs and goats and stuff like
Yeah.
that, because they're omnivores.
They
I
can
mean,
just eat anything.
they can eat anything.
Yeah.
So shit, man. Where I lived in Holly Hill or Daytona, there was like wild pigs that had like
Yeah.
escaped from someone's farm, and there was like a whole generation of
They
them
can
out
live
there,
for generations and generations.
run around in the woods.
And they're not even afraid of humans. They'll still come up and ask for food.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you
Yeah.
got anything? Hey,
Yeah.
hey. Well, you know, any port in a storm.
Yep.
We probably got better shit than whatever. So yeah, I was like reading this one blog that was kind of talking about Boleskine House and the different stories about it. And this person had actually done like a lot of research on people that had lived in it later. And he said that he wasn't actually sure. He's like, he didn't know what ended up happening to Molly Lorraine. He kind of lost track of her. However, Dennis Lorraine apparently moved to London and was kind of like destitute. You know what I mean? He was kind of like a drunk, and he just went crazy and like slept with a gun under his pillow and all this other kind of stuff. Now, there's also a story on Wikipedia that a married couple moved into the house in the late 60s. Story goes, the wife was blind, and after a month, the man walked out, leaving the woman wandering around, unable to see.
What?
So it's like, so Wikipedia mentioned that. The guy that wrote this blog was like, I don't really know where they got that story from. Like, the Wikipedia story was sourced to a book that came out in 2008 by someone with the last name of Wall. So I don't know, like, where they got that story from. Like, and the thing is, it's like, if you were blind since birth, it's like you wouldn't just wander around the house going, oh no, I can't see, I'm totally helpless. They can like still
They're
feel
normal,
things and
yeah.
like hear things and stuff. They have other senses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like she would just wander around and go, oh no, now I'm going to starve to death. That's just because no one else
No.
is here. That's dumb.
No, blind people are competent.
Of course they
know
are.
They know where they are.
And like I said, it's like their
Yeah.
other senses compensate. So it's
Yeah.
like, I'm not really sure like where that story came from. So in 1969, experimental filmmaker Kenneth Anger, who was very interested in the occult, he actually found out that Boleskine House was on the market, and he rented it for a couple of months. And that's how Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin ended up hearing about it, and he bought the house in 1970. Now, Jimmy Page, as well as the other members of Led Zeppelin, but, you know, mostly Jimmy Page, was very interested in Aleister Crowley. He collected a lot of Aleister Crowley memorabilia. Like, he'd read all of his books and was, like, really interested in his philosophy and whatnot. So the thing about it is that I feel like when you were talking earlier about how, oh, Led Zeppelin lived in this house and, like, they were, like, selling their soul to the devil and stuff like that, Jimmy Page bought the house, but he didn't really live in it. He owned it from 1970, I think, till 1991. But I think over that whole entire time, from what I could determine, I think he really only stayed there a total of about 6 weeks.
So it was part of
He
his,
didn't live there.
So it was part of his Crowley collection.
Yeah, because
Basically.
he collected just like memorabilia and stuff.
I remember hearing all kinds of fucking weird shit, like that they wrote fucking Stairway to Heaven in that damn.
I mean, maybe they
house
did, because
and-
he did buy it because he thought it. One, he was like really into Crowley, but he thought like the vibes and stuff would be cool for like writing music and
That
stuff.
they wrote the whole fucking. What is it? What's the name of that album? Houses of the Holy.
Houses of the Holy, yeah.
Album in there. And that they recorded it in there, which I don't believe that's true at all. I think that was recorded at a professional studio somewhere. But
Yeah, because the thing about it is that when Jimmy Page bought the house, it was kind of in shitty condition.
yeah,
So you couldn't I mean, you could live in it, but it wasn't like in the best shape.
those dudes
So-
had money. Man, they didn't have a reason to stay there.
Yeah, so he was kind of trying to, he was trying to restore it, like, well, but he wasn't living in it. He did actually, and actually I didn't know this, but Jimmy Page later on, he actually owned an occult bookshop in London called the Equinox. But yeah.
Part of his collection.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jimmy Page didn't live there. However, his friend, Malcolm Dent, he actually kind of recruited Malcolm to live in the house and like look after it. And so Malcolm Dent ended up living there for quite a while, and like he lived there with his family. He's also been interviewed extensively on documentaries about the house and stuff like that. So Malcolm Dent says that when he moved into the house, he said it had pretty much been abandoned for a really long time and it was essentially a wreck. He said there had been a small fire there at some point, so some of it had been burned. Parts of the buildings were like missing or had like fallen down. The outside grounds were like just looked really shitty. Now, he claimed that he didn't believe in like any kind of paranormal or supernatural anything, but he said that as soon as he moved into the house, like all kind of weird shit started happening. Now, he says that he had been living there for a couple of weeks, and then he started hearing like these weird rumbling sounds like from the hallway, like outside his room. And then when he would go to investigate, there was nothing there. But then he would close the bedroom door again and then it would start again. Now, because he was curious about this, and I guess the noise like continued so much, it was like really, regular. So he looked into the history of the house and came across the story about good old Lord Lovett and his severed head rolling up and down the hallway.
So that's where that came from.
So he's presuming that that's what that was. Because, I mean, that story had been going around for a really long time. So he said that maybe, I guess, because like I said, Lord Lovett was executed in London, so they're like, why would his head be rolling around on the hall of like Boleskine House? But apparently, there's a place just right above Boleskine that's supposed to be like the geographical center of the Highlands, and it's supposed to have like some kind of weird magical energy or something. So maybe that like sucked his head there, or I don't know. So Malcolm Dent also said that he experienced what he called the most terrifying night of my life at Boleskine House. He says he woke up one night and he heard what sounded like a wild animal, like snorting, scratching, like banging outside the bedroom door. Now, at first, he said it sounded like a dog, but then, like, as he listened to it, he realized it was, like, way too big to be a dog. So he's like, the sound kept going on, and then he just like laid there all night, like listening to it. And he said he got a really, really bad feeling that whatever was out there, it was like some really big like creature, and it was like pure evil. He said that he got that kind of feeling. He didn't see it, but he said he heard it like all night because he was too chicken to get up and open the door and see what it was. But when he opened the door in the morning, obviously there was nothing there, but he like heard it all night, and he said he got like a really bad feeling of like concentrated evil. There was apparently another friend of his who stayed at Boleskine House, who said she was attacked by something that looked like a devil. There was also some poltergeist activity. Chairs, like a furniture, would like switch places, like or be in different places. Doors slammed open and closed, like by themselves. Rugs would roll up by themselves, and all this other kind of stuff. But however, despite this, Malcolm Dent lived there for quite a long time, and raised a family there. And was apparently not, I guess he was scared of it, but it wasn't enough to, like, drive him out of it.
Well, this is the thing that's kind of snapped me out of what you're saying, though.
What's that?
He said that he didn't really believe in any paranormal stuff, but he saw all this.
Yeah.
How do you see all this and go,
No, he said before he moved in there.
Before he moved there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, yeah.
He later said, because like I said, I saw an interview with him on one of the documentaries that I was watching on YouTube. He said, essentially, the house kind of like, he didn't use these words, but he was saying that it kind of like personalized the things that it would do, like to the person. Yeah. Like, I don't know if it's like it would do what you were most afraid of, or because it's like some people would come there and not experience anything, but it's like maybe it just had to do something with like your personality or your beliefs or something like that. Like it would kind of, he said he talked about the house as though it was a conscious entity.
In Star Wars terms, what they're saying is that the place was strong with the dark side.
Yeah, that's essentially what
you go in there and you might have visions. You might have a paranormal fucking...
Yeah, or maybe nothing will happen.
Or maybe
he's just saying it depends on the person. Right. He's just saying that it's...
Saying.
Yeah, he's just saying that it's very tailored to the person.
It was strong with the dark side.
Yeah.
I don't fucking doubt it, man. I'm just saying that's just what he's saying. Maybe Mammoth was strong with the dark side, but I don't know, because that phenomenon started before I actually got there.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back.
We'll have to do that one of these days. It's like maybe we should do like a Kickstarter, like for all of them. We'll just be like to go back to Mammoth and like do. I don't know if they'll like let us go in there.
We'll take a donor or something or a patron with us.
Yeah, and like we can sleep there.
Yeah.
I mean, is it for sale or rent
It's
or?
for sale. I
Yeah.
could find out. Here's the thing. I'm looking at the pictures of it and I go, that's it.
Yeah.
I think the address has changed slightly because I think they changed the numbering on the buildings.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe they added more and they.
Or they knocked some down.
Or they
and
knocked some down
and renumbered them. But I got to talk to Lois. Lois was, of course, an adult during that time.
Yeah.
And she would help me figure it out a little bit better. If anybody has the money and wants to go back to Mammoth, yeah, I could.
Because I'd be curious to go. I've never been in
We
California.
might be able to make that happen. We got to see the people that own it. If they're up to that. If they're
Yeah.
up for that.
It's like, hey, we had some haunting shit here. Can we just we
Yeah.
don't have to stay like one night or something, or a couple of nights maybe,
You want to stay there for a couple of days
and see if anything happens.
Yeah, nothing happens. We just party there.
Yeah, that
Right.
works too. It's win-win.
Yeah. And you'd want to go during the ski season.
Yeah,
So if you wanted to ski, you could ski while you were there.
yeah. I wouldn't want to.
I don't know how to ski.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I would break both my legs, my arms, my neck.
I'd
my
rather
nose.
sit up there and just kind of fucking relive the past.
That's.
Which
I'd
that
probably
might
just
bring it back.
I would just like to sit in the snow and like drink hot chocolate. I don't need to
Yeah.
ski. Like I said, I'd break every bone in my body. As klutzy as I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Malcolm Dent, he's like, even though, all this paranormal shit was happening, and like even people that visited him like experienced similar like poltergeist type activity, it didn't stop him from like living there for quite a long time, looking after it. Well, Jimmy Page owned it, but he, like I said, he wasn't usually there, so he essentially was like living in the house with his family. He said really the most annoying thing was all the people that were making pilgrimages to Boleskine because of Aleister Crowley, because of its, notoriety. So he's like, we get all these people like hanging out like by the house and trying to break in and all this other kind of stuff because of the house's reputation. He's like, so we had to have like all these like super extra locks and everything on the house to keep them from breaking in. So that was like the biggest pain in the ass, he thought. So while Jimmy Page owned it, like I said, he didn't spend a great deal of time there, but he was trying to restore it back to not necessarily how it would have looked when Crowley lived there, but how he imagined it might have looked when Crowley lived there, I guess. Like he was trying to kind of get back to that period, but he also hired an artist named Charles Pace to do some kind of murals on the walls that were like occult kind of murals and things like that. Now, after a while, the house was actually ended up being put on the market again in 1991. It was put on the market for £250,000. At this point, it was bought by a couple named Ronald and Annette McGillivray. They bought it in 1992. Now, they said even though Dent had been living there, like Jimmy Page had owned it and stuff like that, I guess he hadn't really been in it for a while because when the McGillivrays bought it, they said it was pretty much a dump.
Yeah, for almost $500,000?
Yeah, $250,000.
$250,000?
Yeah.
Well, 250. No, you said 250.
250,000 pounds.
Pounds. I thought a pound was about $2.
Well, it depends, and like that, like I said, I don't remember what the
Okay.
exchange rate was
What
in
the
the
exchange
90s,
rate
so
was,
I don't
okay.
really know.
All right.
So basically, they had to strip everything out to the bare walls. They had to put a new roof on it and all this other stuff. They ended up turning it into a hotel. So it was a hotel for a little while. They asked Annette McGillivray if she had ever experienced any mysterious occurrences while they lived at Boleskine House. She said, absolutely none. I am a non-believer and didn't listen to all that rubbish. We had a great time there.
Yeah,
so they
okay.
lived there for quite a while and ran it as a hotel. Ronald actually died in 2002, but Annette lived quite a bit longer. However, while they were living there, I found this very interesting article that was in Glasgow's Sunday Mail, dated March 2000. So apparently there was this BBC film crew, and they were going to the house to film a documentary about Aleister Crowley, which is called The Other Loch Ness Monster. It's actually on YouTube. I watched it earlier today, so you can watch it for free. Now, this article says that this film crew, when they went there, they had all kind of scary paranormal shit happen. I don't know if this stuff really happened to them or if they were trying to hype the documentary or what. Because the people that lived there at the time, because the McGillivrays were still living there in 2000. But this film crew apparently went there filming the documentary and all kind of horrible shit happened. So now the film producer who was making the documentary, he like asked the priest and the minister and stuff like that to bless it, the place. He didn't really believe in it, but he said, "Oh, I'm just like covering all the bases or whatever." But evidently, when the film crew went there, they had all kind of like equipment failures. They got attacked by a plague of beetles, which I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
And they all started having nightmares about Aleister Crowley, like the same dreams, or so they said. Like a bunch of them said they had the same dreams.
Any details on what the dream was?
Not really. They just kind of said they had dreams.
Aleister coming like what? Dropping his nutsack on you? Teabagging?
He's teabagging.
Yeah, got this like...
Getting teabagged by Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, this omnisexual motherfucker coming up bald-headed.
with his hat.
With his shorn nutsack dropping it on your face. That'd be a nightmare, bro. Be a fucking nightmare. And he's got the damn pharaoh fucking headdress on.
I know. I love that picture of him with this
freaky motherfucker.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know,
he seemed like kind of fun though. It's like he probably would have been fun to hang out.
I'm sure that dude is hilarious.
He probably, like I said, he sounds like he'd be fun to party with.
Yeah, he's gonna, you know, his PR was all ominous, but that's how he made his fucking, you know, that's how he made his reputation.
Yeah.
But meeting him, he was probably fucking hilarious. I'm sure I bet.
I feel like he was like doing the same kind of shit that like, you know,
a lot of goths would do in the scene.
Yeah, or like heavy metal bands and stuff like that. Like, we're so evil, you know what I mean? And then like you hang out with him and they're like awesome, you know what I mean?
Probably like Ozzy.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. That he was kind of like that type of dude.
Right.
So, so they also, this film crew, apparently they took like a bunch of pictures around Boleskine House and all of them were ruined by a ghostly fog. Also, they were doing a late night shoot in the graveyard opposite the house, which I think is still there. Like, I have pictures of it. And while they were doing that, like, they had like all the, you know, the Krieg lights or whatever they call those. Yeah. And they exploded. So, like, and like showered glass all over the crew. Fuses burned out. Camera stands fell over. As I said, a bunch of members of the team had nightmares about Crowley. One crew member's mobile phone kept ringing intermittently without warning, and another's alarm clock kept going off at exactly the same time.
3:15.
Yeah, probably. That's what I was thinking. It was like Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
It was the time of the axe murder, you guys.
Yeah.
So, as I said before, they also said they were attacked by a beetle infestation. Now, why specifically it was a beetle infestation, the producer of the documentary had a theory. He said, it said Crowley and another guy in Paris, I'm presuming he means Mathers, were sending magical spells to each other. I guess through the mail. In one spell, Crowley's dogs died, which Crowley did mention early in his diary, and they were besieged by a strange kind of beetle that could not be identified by the Natural History Museum. As we were interviewing a man about that incident, the crew were overrun by beetles. They were swarming around the cameras, crawling over the lenses, and banging off the lights. They also made a weird shrieking noise. You could hear it on our soundtrack.
I know exactly what they're talking about.
What should have been a straightforward shoot took 14 hours.
When I was in California, we had those beetles, or a beetle similar to that. It's called a Japanese beetle.
Yeah.
And they were kind of brown with white stripes on them, and they would make that... Yeah. I'd grab them as a little kid, try to hold them, and they would fucking vibrate and make that fucking...
Yeah.
Beep,
let go of me.
Probably some kind of Japanese beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we, you know how in California got them because they came in fucking shipments of fucking, you know what I mean, stuff that came from Japan.
They're like an invasive species.
They're like an invasive species, yeah.
We have some bugs like that too. What are those big like cicada things and...
Cicadas, I think, have been here forever.
And all those other kind of... What are those other big bugs that like fly around here that like make that fucking whoosh kind of noise?
I don't know.
We have all the bugs in Florida pretty much.
The ones that I haven't seen in a long time since I was a kid are those big fucking black grasshoppers with the yellow and the...
Yeah, I remember
those. When I was a kid,
those.
we used to see them all the time.
Yeah, in fact, my grandmother's yard, they were like, every summer, they would be like fucking everywhere. And she would have to go out there and pluck them off her plants.
That had something to do... It was a kind of a locust. It was a kind of a grasshopper that fucking got roided out from bad conditions. And it was... Summers were hotter back then. I mean, I know people want to go on this global warming, but I was a kid. I remember the fucking summers in Mississippi just being fucking ungodly hot. And that's when we saw those black grasshoppers. It had something to do with fields being destroyed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like crops going bad. Haven't seen it in a long time. The last time I saw one of those, was about 5 years ago. No, longer than that. About 7 years ago, it was just one of them. When I was working out at a barn one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, working with the horses. That's the last time I've seen one of
Yeah,
them. They're black.
I haven't seen one in a while.
Yellow wings, and there was like yellow.
Well, there's red on them too.
Red and yellow. Yeah.
They're very like colorful.
And they're evil.
They're large.
Real aggressive. Get near them and they start flapping their wings and everything. Like they're going to attack you, like they're poisonous.
They're like as big as your hand.
Yeah.
They're not
huge.
Poisonous though. They're just big assholes.
They act like they're poisonous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that coloring is just kind of like they're just like, look, I'm dangerous, man. Mm.
Yeah. They attack.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one of those in a while though.
Right.
So apparently, like I said, this documentary actually did get made because I saw it. But apparently this documentary, when it was first being made, or a few years before when they were like thinking about making it, the producer of it actually asked Oliver Reed and asked him to narrate it, and Oliver Reed would not because he was like superstitious about the house. Apparently, that's what the producer said. So after the death of Ronald McGillivray, the guy that owned the house, like I said, the McGillivrays had run it as a hotel. They put Boleskine House up for sale again. Now, the new owners were a Dutch family. Now, they did not want any publicity. They converted it back into a private residence. They used it like for a holiday house. They didn't live there all the time. They just kind of went there for holidays. So they kept anonymous. They didn't really want any publicity about it. In 2009, there was about a 2-acre plot of land that was put on the market for £176,000. They actually had plans drawn up to build a 3-bedroom log house on it that was like, and there was also some, you got like some shoreline of like Loch Ness, but I don't think that was ever done. Now in 2015, on December 23rd, only 2 days before Christmas, at approximately 1:40 p.m., there was a motorist on the A82 road reported flames and smoke coming from Boleskine House. By the time that the firefighters got there, 60% of the building had already been incinerated, flames rising up to 20 feet high. The firefighters, therefore, were forced to kind of just try to put out what they could, like even though a lot of the house had already been destroyed. What ended up happening, there was apparently no one in the house. The guy who owned the house, I think his wife and daughter had gone out shopping. And then when they came back, like the house was burning down. They think that it started in the kitchen. They don't particularly think that one was arson. No one was hurt or anything like that, but the house is pretty much destroyed and there's pictures of it all over the place. The roof is entirely gone. It's just a complete mess. So then in 2009, the end of July, or 2019 rather, 2 buildings on the same plot, because it's not just the house. There's like other little outbuildings and stuff. Those 2 buildings were partially destroyed by fire as well. Now, those 2 fires, they do suspect that that's arson, although they never have caught the person that did it. So they're still, they're still like, police are like, if you have any information, blah, 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 and everything like that. Now, Boleskine House was actually bought by the Boleskine House Foundation, SCIO, in 2019, and they are planning to completely restore it back to the way it was, and they're going to open it to the public, presumably as a museum, which is kind of neat. So they're looking for like donations and stuff like that. They have a website, I think it's just boleskinehouse.org, and they just started the restoration like a month ago. And there's a pretty long, it's not really a documentary, but it's just like film of the guy like walking around the ruins and like saying what they're going to do with it and stuff, because I watched some of it. So I kind of hope that they, can get it. It is like a part of history, and it would be kind of cool if they got it all restored and people could go see it.
Here's my theory.
What's that?
If anything was paranormal had happened there, it wasn't so much because of the fucking house. It was the people in the house. You had a lot of spiritually active people and people that were involved in the, in paranormal and, mystical type things, and maybe that caused some phenomena to happen. But it's not necessarily that location.
Yeah.
It was just the people at that location may have done it. Now, some other people came in later and reported some things. Maybe some of that was hoax. Maybe some of that was people had psyched themselves up based upon the history of the place and then caused it to happen, you know?
I feel like once a place has a reputation as a haunted house,
yeah, it's like snowballs.
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy
Yeah.
because people go there like expecting something to happen,
Which brings kind of a certain psychic energy to it, and that might kick
or
it off again.
either that, or they're just like interpreting like stuff that they wouldn't even notice
Yeah,
in a
they
regular
might interpret
place
stuff that is not paranormal
as paranormal because they're
Right.
expecting this house
Yeah.
to be haunted.
It all depends on who's there. I'd have to see it.
Yeah.
And all of you in the audience would have to be there to see it for yourself in order to make that kind of judgment.
Yeah, because it's like it's hard to just take one person's word for
Yeah.
it, because even if the person wasn't lying necessarily, they could have been mistaken. I mean, there could have been like a lot of other
Or though
things
maybe
going.
some shit happened there.
Yeah.
Maybe some things happened there. Maybe
Even if it didn't, it's like I just find the history of the house really interesting. Like
Yeah.
all the shit about Crowley and like why he picked it and like what he did there and stuff. So it's like even, I just think all the stories about it are cool, whether they're true
Yeah.
or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
'Cause
famous
just,
people fucking doing weird shit.
yeah, because it's like I just like weird history
Mm-hmm.
type shit like that, even if there was nothing supernatural involved. All right, so I think we've gone on long enough about Boleskine House and
Shut it down.
the history thereof.
Shut it down, Jim.
Okay.
Shut it down. Oh, before you shut it down, I'd like to say, hey, if you guys like the show, please hit us up on Patreon.
Yeah.
Every dollar counts at this point.
It
But we're
does,
looking
yeah.
for patrons.
Yep, and it will help us produce shows. Like I said, we're
Yep.
doing 4 shows a week now.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll have a show every day.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do that to myself.
God, man, you've been working hard.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's like, you know what I mean. I do enjoy doing the shows. It's like I have other stuff that I do that I enjoy also, but
Yeah.
I do enjoy doing these. So remember, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe, tell everybody about us. Like anybody that you know that you think would be into this kind of shit, tell them about us and maybe they'll dig it too. And like I said, if you'd like to financially support the show, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a button in the sidebar that goes to a PayPal account if you'd like to give a one-time donation, as some of our people do.
Yeah, we got some good one-time donations there.
That is also very much appreciated. Like I said, every dollar helps, goes toward the show, goes toward, we don't like go around buying coke and hookers with it or anything like that. It's like we pay bills.
We get all that for free.
We get coke and hookers for free.
Yeah, we get that for free.
We do. Where was I? He's like
No,
holding out on me.
No.
But yes,
I gotta talk shit,
we get that shit for free. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That's another good shirt.
Yeah.
We get that shit for free. Coke and hookers. Yeah, we use it for, just regular bills. We use it for, just improving
Clothes.
the show, all that.
Auto repair.
Yeah. Oh, you guys. But yeah, well, at least the cars are running now. But, $1,400 later. God damn it. Yeah, right around Christmas, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, that will do it for episode 177, the first official episode of 2020. The year that's like not even real. It's like the surreal fucking year. We're in the future.
in the roaring 20s.
I guess so.
It sounds so much better.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, it does.
It's just, okay.
I sound like I'm in the future.
We'll we are in the future.
Yeah.
Ooh. But yeah, okay, so we will see you guys next time. Bye.